Honorable the Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the Creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this House here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
My brother and my you made me famous. Yes. But you made me famous. I'll speak to you.
So affirmation announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, Mrs. Glenda Jennings-Smith, MP, member for Toko Sandy Grande, has requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
The Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following paper. The ministerial response of the Ministry of Finance to the third report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, second session, 11th Parliament, on the examination of the system of inventory control within the public service.
The Deputy Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. The response of the Office of the Parliament to the third report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, second session, 11th Parliament, on the examination of the system of inventory control within the public service. And secondly, the response of the Registration, Recognition and Certification Board to the third report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, second session, 11th Parliament, on the examination of the system of inventory control within the public service. Thank you.
Reports from committees.
Member for Karim Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to present the following reports. The 8th report of the Public Accounts Committee for the second session, 11th Parliament, on the examination of the report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on a special audit of the Public Transport Service Corporation. And secondly, the 9th report of the Public Accounts Committee for the second session, 11th Parliament, on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial years 2014 and 15, with specific reference to the Ministry of Health.
The member for Diego Martin, Northeast.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the following reports. The 4th interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Insurance Bill 2016. And the 3rd interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Gambling, Gaming and Betting Control Bill 2016.
Member for San Fernando West.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the following report. The interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Cybercrime Bill 2017.
Member for Laventille West.
Thank you warmly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the distinct honor to present the following report. The 4th report of the Joint Select Committee on National Security, second session, 2016 to 2017, 11th Parliament, on an inquiry into prison security and the status of the investigation into the Port of Spain prison break of July 24th, 2015. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Lupino, Bonia West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the following report. The fourth report of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, second session, 11 Parliament, on an inquiry into the operations and administration of the Vehicle Management Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, with specific focus on the repair and acquisition of vehicles for state bodies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ministers, questions, urgent questions.
Member for Urupuch West.
To the Minister of Finance, in light of claims made by the chairman of the Penal-Dable Regional Corporation that the finances allocated to treat with victims of Tropical Storm Brett is insufficient, could the Minister please indicate if additional funding will be provided?
Minister of Finance.
Firstly, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Finance is not aware of any request from the Penal-Dable Corporation for finances to treat with issues associated with Tropical Storm Brett. So it might be a good idea to ask them to do so. But in addition, Madam Speaker, the government had initially allocated the sum of $25 million to deal with the aftermath of Tropical Storm Brett. And yesterday, Cabinet decided to increase that amount to $30 million. Some of that $30 million will be given to the Ministry of Local Government for redistribution to the affected corporations.
Member for Karim East Supplemental.
Bearing in mind, Honourable Minister, that the chairman of the corporation indicated that just for farmers alone it might amount to $25 million. If that is submitted to you, what would you undertake to give some serious consideration to that issue, where farmers alone in that area have lost over $25 million?
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, in the first instance, it is my understanding, at least since I have been a member of this House, which is 25 years, that farmers make representation to the Ministry of Agriculture, not the regional corporation. That is the established procedure as far as I am aware. So I would suggest you direct that question to the Minister of Agriculture.
Member for Naparima.
Minister, tell us on what basis and on what empirical data were the additional funds allocated?
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, it is based on the capacity of the government to provide relief at this point in time.
Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Works and Transport, could the Minister indicate whether an agreement has been finalized for the replacement cargo and passenger vessels for transportation system between Trinidad and Tobago?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at a press conference this morning, the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago announced the following. A cargo vessel, the Cabo Star, is expected to arrive in Trinidad between the 2nd and 3rd week of July 2017. The vessel can accommodate 120 passengers and cargo to suit the needs of the citizens of Tobago and Trinidad. It has been chartered for 1 year at a cost of $22,500 US per day. A passenger vessel, the Ocean Flower, is expected to arrive in Trinidad on the 17th of July 2017. This vessel has been chartered for 1 year at a cost of $26,500 US per day. Thank you.
Member for Karim East.
Honourable Minister, indicate whether there has been any tendering process for the acquisition of these vessels on a lease basis, and if so, could you indicate who tendered what were the tender prices?
Member, one question, please.
The tendering process.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on several occasions I have indicated that the government of Trinidad and Tobago found itself in a situation where the cargo vessel was pulled from service, and the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago had to utilize all the vessels that were available at that point in time. There was a tender issued. That tender, however, was not subscribed to. We got one tenderer. And the Port Authority, again, utilized the services of local agents. They looked at what was submitted to the port. Hence why a charter was signed for 1 year with the expectation that a new tender will be going out very shortly. Thank you.
Member for Karim.
Are you saying, Honorable Minister, that for the acquisition of these two vessels there has been no tender and it was sent directly to a local agent without any tendering process by the local agent?
Yes. Minister of Works and Transport.
Madam Speaker, I think I was very clear as to the process used, and any further information I'm sure the port can submit in writing to you. Thank you.
Member for Couva North.
Thank you to the Minister of Health. Could the Minister indicate the expected commencement date for the spraying of areas negatively affected by floods in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Brett?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon to all, and I thank the member for the question. Tropical Storm Brett made its passage in Trinidad and Tobago over the 18th and 19th of June. By Thursday, 22nd June, 90% of the flooded areas were already assessed. By Friday, 23rd June, the following actions commenced. St. George East, St. Helena and Madras, ULV spraying over about 1,000 homes. Perifocal work started. Biocidal spraying was done. Caroni, the area of Madras settlement, was addressed via perifocal work. Victoria West, woodland and environs were treated by both perifocal work and residual spraying. The corporations, after washing down, they had to do their bit first, then insect vector came afterwards and did biocide spraying. We are also doing residual spraying to tackle the adults, which will keep mosquitoes at bay for at least about 3 weeks. Victoria East, Kanhai Road and Oropuch River Road and the Barapur community were visited by 9 perifocal workers. Work was done. St. Patrick East, Clark Road, Penal Rock Road and the Penal community were visited. St. Patrick West, Ikakas, Fullerton and Bonas were visited. Nariva, Mayaro, same thing. Vector control activities over the next week, which has already commenced. We are working on weekends. County, Caroni and flood-affected areas in the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation, Kaparo, Oropun, La Hoqueta. Perifocal work is also continuing. We are also doing work with schools, and we are also collaborating with the regional corporations. That is a synopsis of work already done, starting 2 to 3 days after the passage of Tropical Storm Brett. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental, Couva North.
Minister, you identified areas that were harshly affected, but there were other areas also that have been left out from your list. Can you give a timeline as to where these other areas would be sprayed, assessed and sprayed?
Sure. But as I said, 90% of the areas were already assessed. So if you have a particular concern, please let me know, and I will make sure your particular concern is addressed. But we are working on weekends to make sure all affected areas are addressed. And I give you the assurance, if you have any particular concern, please speak with me as we communicate very often, and your concerns will be addressed. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions unnoticed, questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are 6 questions for oral answer. We'll be answering all 6. There are no written questions.
Member for Point-a-Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 170 to the Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Venezuela trade agreement is between local manufacturers and the Venezuelan Foreign Trade Corporation, Corpovex. The Ministry of Trade and Industry has been advised that for the initial 3 months of the period June 2016 to August 2016, payments were made in a full and timely manner. For the second 3 months of the agreement for the period September 2016 to November 2016, trade was extended outside of the 3-month period since the total order of goods has not yet been fulfilled. Payments are therefore still being received, with the last being recorded in April 2017. There are currently outstanding payments which are the subject of discussion between the local manufacturers and Corpovex. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental member for point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister state what is the outstanding balance?
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, that figure is not readily available, but I can provide it.
Member for point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 171 to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the contract for the Sealots Overpass, 9 contractors were invited for the tender. The prices range between 17 million. The contractor that was successful is Structural and Mechanical Agencies Limited, who came in at 10,474,000, which was under the engineer's estimate, and the completion date is at the end of September 2017. Thank you.
Member for point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 172 to the Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With respect to Part A of the question, the demolition of squatter homes in Valencia on May 15, 2017 was initiated by the Commissioner of State Lands. The Commissioner of State Lands is appointed under Section 5 of the State Lands Act, Chapter 5701. The duties and powers of the Commissioner are outlined et al. In Section 6.1 of the Act, which reads as follows: the Commissioner shall have management of all lands of the state and shall be charged with the prevention of squatting and encroachment upon the same, and of spoil and injury to the woods and forests on such lands, and shall superintend the settlement and allotment of state lands and the laying out of village lots in such districts as the President from time to time directs. Madam Speaker, with respect to Part B, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development is not involved in the demolition of squatter homes, and therefore Part B of this question does not apply.
Member for Oropuch West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 176 to the Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker. With respect to Part A of the question, there were significant blockages to the sewer system at the stadium caused by the indiscriminate disposal of unauthorized objects and materials. The system was not designed to cope with such abuse. With respect to Part B of the question, to avoid a recurrence of the problem, a scheduled program of monitoring and inspection of the sewer system will be implemented. Before and after each event, the sewer network will be checked for any blockages. Janitorial staff will also be posted near the washrooms during events to encourage proper use and to assist patrons where necessary. Sewer system misuse will also be mitigated through education and public awareness, with the installation of additional signage to advise users of the proper practices for use of the toilet facilities. Additional sanitary and garbage bins will also be strategically placed. With respect to Part C of the question, remedial works have been conducted and all blockages have been cleared. There was no cost to UDCOT as the contractors performed works free of charge as the problems occurred within the defects liability period.
Member for Miaro.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Question number 180 to the Minister of Public Utilities.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, TNTEC, consistent with this government's policy on renewable energy and energy conservation, excuse me, is committed to exploring the option of implementing new and existing technologies that can provide energy efficiency, reduction in energy consumption, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and consequent cost savings. In this regard, TNTech has embarked on several pilot projects utilizing light-emitting diode technology, inclusive of solar-powered LED lights. The solar street lighting project, involving the installation of 100 solar-powered LED street lights along the Manzanilla-Mayaro Road, is one such initiative. TNTech is currently in the final stage of evaluating the bids for the supply of the LED solar lights for this project. The evaluation process, once completed and barring unforeseen circumstances, a contract award will be made within the next month. The installation work should commence shortly thereafter. The project is scheduled for completion by the end of 2017. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member for Mayaro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 181 to the Minister of Health.
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon again to all. The Global Medical Response of Trinidad and Tobago, GMRTT, provides a national ambulance emergency service for Trinidad with an ambulance deployment strategy to ensure that all citizens, regardless of location, receive an equitable, quality, and efficient service. GMRTT has indicated that for the Mayaro constituency, most of the responses fall within the 8-kilometer response band with an average response time of 25 minutes. Notably, during the period January 1 to June 13, 2007, GMRTT recorded 35 ambulance patient transports in Mayaro and 105 in Rio Claro, for a total of 140 ambulance patient transports. This equates to approximately 1 ambulance transport per day for the area. It should be noted that the ambulance deployment plan is adjusted on an hourly basis to cater for the demand and to improve the patient experience. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Mayaro, supplemental.
Honorable Minister, could you give me an idea of how many ambulances are actually deployed within the constituency, that is assigned to the constituency?
Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, the ambulance fleet for the whole of Trinidad currently stands at 43, of which 34 are on the road at any particular time. Plans are underway to boost that by 25 to bring the complement up to 68. Ambulances are not deployed by constituency. They are deployed based on historical data, historical load, but also the algorithm changes every hour to cater for any shift in demand. So resources can either be sent to one area if there's increased demand, or taken away for another area if there's decreased demand. So there isn't a deployment by constituency. It's deployment by load, and this is changed every hour depending on particular needs for any area. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers.
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have been authorized by the Cabinet to read the following statement. Madam Speaker, I wish to advise this Honourable House that the Cabinet took a decision on Thursday, 22nd June, with respect to the way forward in treating with the issue of the unsafe condition of the central block of the Port of Spain General Hospital, a matter of grave concern which was referred to recently by the Honourable Prime Minister. The central block of the Port of Spain General Hospital is a 6-story building constructed in 1952, which houses inpatient and clinical services with a total of 400 beds. Over the past few years, there have been several studies done which cast serious doubt as to the structural integrity of the building. Among the studies was a 2009 ParlView report in which an assessment was made on the structural integrity of the building and several major deficiencies were determined. ParlView advised that the central block was vulnerable to serious distress and possibly catastrophic collapse in the event of an earthquake. Subsequently, in 2013, the Northwest Regional Health Authority commissioned another structural report from Aaron Bush and Associates Limited, a civil and infrastructural engineering consulting firm which offered two options: structural retrofitting works or demolition. The report from the Aaron Bush, dated February 17, 2014, was provided to the then Ministry of Works and Infrastructure for evaluation. The Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, via letter dated April 29, 2014, recommended the demolition and reconstruction of the central block. Yet another report in April 2016 from the engineering firm Leung and Partners noted their observations of the deteriorating state of the building structure. A further report from Aaron Bush and Associates Limited in March 31, 2017 recommended the replacement of the central block. Given the condition of the central block, the government took steps over the last several months to lessen the load on the building by the partial decanting of some beds, and this process will continue as alternative space is identified. Further, last week on June 22, 2017, Cabinet took a decision that 1, the central block of Port of Spain Hospital be demolished, and 2, a new central block will be constructed as a matter of urgency, and this will be undertaken in a manner that would minimize the negative impact on the delivery of healthcare at the Port of Spain General Hospital. The proposed scope of works for the new central block will include the design, construction, equipping, and commissioning of the new facility, with the actual number of beds to be determined by the Ministry of Health and the Northwest Regional Health Authority, but with a minimum of 500 beds to cater for a growing population and the equally growing demand for inpatient services. The block will include accident and emergency services, diagnostic imaging services, operating theatre and recovery room services, an intensive care unit, a high dependency unit, and a mortuary, along with ancillary support services. A detailed and individual skills and human resource needs assessment of the hospital staff, both clinical and non-clinical, is to be undertaken during the development of the project. Officials from the Ministry of Health and the Northwest RHA have been mandated to proceed as a matter of urgency with the development of the user brief, which will be utilized for tendering purposes. The Ministry of Finance will explore the funding arrangements for this critical project, which must be implemented without delay. The decisive action taken by this government towards treating with this long-standing issue demonstrates in no uncertain way this government's concern for the safety of patients, staff, and visitors, and our commitment towards the delivery of quality healthcare services in a safe and conducive environment. The Port of Spain General Hospital serves a catchment population of approximately 300,000, which includes Chaguanas, Caranage, and Diego Martin in the west, to Maracas, Las Cuevas, and Blanchisseres in the north, and St. Joseph in the east, with many communities in between, such as Belmont, Laventille, Mova, Barataria Sawa, the southeast Port of Spain community, including Beetham Gardens. Madam Speaker, members of this Honourable House will appreciate the importance of having a modern hospital in the capital city to serve not only residents in the catchment area and the transient working population, but also serve as an impetus for achieving government's 2030 vision of developed country status. Consistent with this developed country status, we hope to encourage re-migration of both resident and business nationals to this new sustainable city centre. With this initiative, this government hopes to reinvigorate and engender a sense of national pride in our capital city and central business district, as we seek to position Port of Spain as a major hub for business and conference tourism in the region. The upgrade of the Port of Spain General Hospital is also being implemented in the context of government's thrust towards city renewal, consistent with other sustainable development initiatives, such as the recently opened government plaza and public offices. Madam Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to inform this Honourable House of some of the other health infrastructure initiatives that this government is currently embarking upon. Specifically, I would like to highlight our decision to purchase, install, and commission a dual high-energy linear accelerator for the National Radiotherapy Center in St. James, which will treat cancer patients on-site and contribute to significant savings to the taxpayer, as we currently spend in excess of $26 million per annum on external beam radiation treatment in the private and health sector. Additionally, this government is in the process of building 2 new hospitals in Arima and Point Fortin. The Couva Hospital, which was completed in August 2016, is currently being positioned to be incorporated into the health infrastructure of the country. In closing, I wish to reiterate the decisive action taken by this government with respect to the central block on the Port of Spain General Hospital. Madam Speaker, members of this Honourable House, the Port of Spain General Hospital will be returned to its original condition and the high quality of patient-centric care that it was once so famously known for. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, having regard to the 4th interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Insurance Bill 2016, I beg to move that the committee be allowed an extension of 11 weeks in order to complete its work and submit a final report by September 15th, 2017. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is, be it resolved that the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Insurance Bill 2016 be allowed an extension of 11 weeks in order to complete its work and submit a final report by September 15, 2017. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, having regard to the 3rd interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Gambling, Gaming and Betting Control Bill 2016, I beg to move that the committee be allowed an extension of 11 weeks in order to complete its work and submit a final report by September 15th, 2017. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is, be it resolved that the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Gambling, Gaming and Betting Control Bill 2016 be allowed an extension of 11 weeks in order to complete its work and submit a final report by September 15, 2017. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. Leader of the House.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, having regard to the interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Cybercrime Bill 2017, I beg to move that the committee be allowed an extension of 11 weeks in order to complete its work and submit a final report by September 15, 2017. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is, be it resolved that the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Cybercrime Bill 2017 be allowed an extension of 11 weeks in order to complete its work and submit a final report by September 15, 2017. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it.
Public business, private members' business, motions.
Honourable members, the debate on the following motion, which was in progress when the House adjourned on Friday, May 26, 2017, will be resumed. Be it resolved that this House take note and express its horror at the exponential growth in the crime rate manifested by historic murder rates, violence against the person and property, and the inexplicable disappearance of citizens. Be it further resolved that this House condemn the Prime Minister and the government for A, failure to address the rising crime epidemic, and B, inability to present a credible anti-crime plan aimed at preventing, detecting, prosecuting, and rehabilitating the criminal elements. the member for Chaguanas East, you have 18 minutes of original speaking time left.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is with a sense of deep sadness that I continue my contribution to this private motion on crime brought by my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Naparima. Within the last 48 hours, our country has witnessed two additional most unfortunate events affecting the lives of our citizens. On Wednesday, we saw the tragic and brutal murder of 13-year-old Videh Subar and his 57-year-old caretaker Rose Mohammed, who, it was reported today, was not only murdered, but was also sexually assaulted. Madam Speaker, this brings me to the question that many of us are asking in this country. What kind of children and now adults have we brought up in Trinidad and Tobago? And then, Madam Speaker, yesterday morning, we were awakened to the news of the kidnapping of South businessman Mr. Gregory Len for ransom. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is clear from all, and I will present the data during the rest of my presentation. It is clear that our country has sunken to an all-time low. Young Videsh was in the prime of his youth, preparing to collect his SCA results next Tuesday and looking forward to entering the next phase of his life, of his education in a secondary school, which is going to be no more. He is the only child for his parents. Mr. Deputy Speaker, could we imagine the pain, the anguish, and the suffering of those parents? Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is very difficult when parents have to bury their children. It is also difficult when children have to bury their parents. But in a situation like this, it is most tragic. Mr. Deputy Speaker, young Videsh will never be able to accomplish his dream of working at Petrotrin, of retiring at age 45, and buying a maxi taxi. He did have his goals. He had dreams and looked forward to enjoying life, but never thought that this would have befallen him. I extend my heartfelt sympathies to both families on these two most tragic events. We are reminded of the scourge of kidnappings, which was so prevalent previously. And I'm going to give the information and the data because we have always to listen to members of the government who will say that crime increases when the opposition is present. And that is the UNC opposition. Nonsense. And I don't want to politicize murders and crimes and kidnappings, but I want to tell the facts as they are. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have seen numerous kidnappings or ransoms. And in some cases, where the ransom has been paid, persons are still murdered. Kidnapping, murders, and all crimes affect not only the immediate families, they affect every member of our society. People are asking the question, is kidnapping what we have to face in this country, for working hard, for being successful, and now that you are perceived to have some assets, you are perceived to be wealthy, that you are now going to be the victim of those who prefer not to work like you for what they have, but to take from what you have done. One of the things that bothers me tremendously is that we have people in our society who are being punished for their ambitions. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is going to happen in a situation like this? We are seeing now, and that is my fear, we are seeing now the return of kidnappings. When we were in government, we had reduced this significantly, and even down to zero. And I will tell you the information. And I'm quoting here from ttcrime.com, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The statistic is frightening. In 2007, the highest ever, there were 155 kidnappings or ransom. In 2008, there were 550 murders. And we had brought that down, kidnappings or ransom, in 2014 to as low as 2. Not that 2 is any figure that we must be boastful of. It would always have been better if we had a 0. Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, what does this mean for us? It will mean that people will now have to be looking carefully at what they do. Always looking over their shoulders. It will mean that there will be an increase in cost, the cost of crime, and therefore the impact cost on ourselves to protect ourselves, our property, and our family. Cost of surveillance cameras, the cost of guard dogs, of burglar proofing. And then sometimes we have seen where people who would have put up these burglar proofings to protect themselves from the criminals so that they will not lose their lives, sometimes ending up losing their lives if there's a fire and they're unable to exit their property. Reinforced fencing and gating. Even some people have electrified fences. Additional lighting. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is also very scary for our children, because parents now have to look out for their children. They might have to employ bodyguards, as was the case in previous years, for the children who are venturing outside of their homes, going to the malls or going to school. This would further encourage them to send their children away to study, as we had experienced in the years gone by under the PNM. And I quoted the years 2008, 2009, 2005. Or some might be pushed to migrate, either to close their businesses or to manage their businesses from abroad.
Like they do now.
Like people do now. They have their surveillance cameras and they can sit in their homes or their apartments abroad and manage their businesses. This will cause unemployment to further increase, because people may be scared to continue, especially if they have threats on their lives. And it will also increase capital flight and the difficulty of reinvesting in Trinidad and Tobago. So, Deputy Speaker, it seems very evident from what I'm saying that more of us in Trinidad and Tobago are living in jails in our homes than those who are incarcerated. I remember when I was going to school, and I just asked for the copy of this, and I want to quote from it. It was a calypso by Penguin, entitled, "We Living in Jail." In 1984, note the year, 1984. And he says, and I quote with your permission, Mr. Deputy Speaker, "Everybody talking about freedom. but is like everybody blind. If you think we're living in freedom, the freedom is only in your mind. Everywhere I look, he says, criminals and crook terrorize as they run amok, while poor you and me, behind lock and key, moving around like if we're in shock. He continues, and all of what he said and he sang at that time is very appropriate now again. He says, while criminals out on bail, honest men catching their tail in their homemade jail. You can't walk the streets no more. You're afraid to open your door like we're fighting war. Burglar-proof iron doors and peephole and a high concrete wall. Still, your nerves in a mess. You have to eat less. But when you have to spend to feed about 10 Doberman that guard in your yard, he says, we're living in jail. Mr. Deputy Speaker, on the last occasion when I spoke in this House, 35 days ago, on the 26th of May, at 6 p.m. I concluded, the murder toll in Trinidad and Tobago was 212. As of today, the 30th of June, the murder toll has risen to 248. Wow. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's becoming almost like one a day. And it is not a vitamin. It ain't building up nobody. It's breaking down the society. It's destroying everything that we have fought for. 35 days, Mr. Deputy Speaker. 36 murders. Whoever wins this debate, the people of Trinidad and Tobago are the ultimate losers. They would have lost their lives. They would have lost their loved ones. Our country has lost its sons and daughters. You know, I remember my wife reminded me of a pastor by the name of Miles Monroe, who used the statement that one of the richest places you can find is the cemetery, where there are many inventions not yet brought out, many books still to be written, many scholars who would have been, many innovations that could have come. But because of crime, criminality, and the situation where we experience the snuffing out of lives unexpectedly, some of those will never be realized. Mr. Deputy Speaker, our future scholars, entrepreneurs, professionals, and even politicians, it appears clearly no one is immune. People in this country are overridden with fear and stress, and they ask, who will be next? It seems as though we are sitting ducks. That if you retaliate like you would have seen recently, they come prepared to kill you. The statistics for the period from May the 26th to the present shows that there were 36 murders, as from the 26th of May, 1 month, and a few days, there were 36 murders. Missing persons, 2. Assault, robbery, 11. Kidnapping, 1. But you know what is very sad? What is very sad is the detection rate. And also, it's abysmally low. And also the conviction rate. You know, people like to talk about other countries. And one of my colleagues on the other side talk about Singapore. I had the privilege to study in Singapore, but I could tell you about Singapore in terms of crime. Crime, if you do the crime, your punishment is sure. It is swift. You don't have to wait long in the judicial system. Even if I could remind you, when President Bill Clinton was in office, a young man went to Singapore and graffitied their train. You remember that? Remember for Laventille was saying yes. And even though he begged for him to be spared, the Singapore government said no to that request. That is the level of discipline a society exhibits. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have the full list of all the crimes and all those who lost their lives for the last month. It includes men, women, the young, the old, children, nationals, and, Mr. Deputy Speaker, foreigners. In 2016, 462 persons lost their lives. That is the highest in 6 years. That was an increase by 42, and that is obtained from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service website. In 2017, 228 as of June 2016. That was the increase by 20, and that is substantiated by articles from the daily newspapers, the Daily Express, and the Guardian. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is clear that, and we're hearing this from all quarters, that Trinidad and Tobago has become a very violent and lawless society. That crime fighting is the police work. That police officers must do their job and respond to criminals. And we have also heard allegations that the police service is corrupt. And the whole question of trust, which I'll come to shortly. And what we're also hearing is that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is responsible for securing the nation, to protect and to serve. And yesterday, I just want to give you an idea in terms of the capability or the lack thereof of crime-fighting initiatives. Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the period 2002 to 2009, there were 1,569 kidnappings reported, of which 787 were detected. The debate continues and the discussion continues, Mr. Deputy Speaker, about our dependence substantially on the police service to protect all of us as citizens in the main. But you know, people continue to ask the question, even this morning on one of the television shows, as to what is the real problem? Why is it so difficult to get a handle on crime? Why is it so difficult for us?
Your initial 30 minutes has expired. You have an additional 15.
Yes.
Avail yourself. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Chairman. Well, now I have to move at a little more speed. And therefore the questions you want to ask is, you have been getting large allocations every year from the national budget. Is it that? Is it a lack of resources? Is it money? Is it that you don't get your back pay? You just got your back pay. Is it higher salaries? Is it that you have to do a manpower audit? But in spite of the audit not being completed, the government of Trinidad and Tobago announced yesterday that they have increased the manpower by 60 CSI officers. So what is the value? What is the value of this manpower audit? 60. 60. Or is it competence or is it expertise? And then we talked about trust. 60. And we talk about trust. And this morning we are hearing from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Association that one of the things that they want to do is to build competence, to build capacity. And where they are going to look at building that capacity as well, in addition to other places, Walden University. For what program? Improving customer service. Lord. You know, I am amazed that Walden is a U.S. university in Minnesota that substantially delivers online training program. We have the University of the West Indies We have the University of Trinidad and Tobago. We have departments of criminology. We have COSTAT. I mean, what it is that is really happening. We have the Arthur Lockjack School, Graduate School of Business. And therefore, what we can do is to look at home. Because very often, when we are looking at universities abroad, the question always is, will that institution be able to respond and fit to our culture? This is one of the, some of the things that have been said this morning too, is that there was an admission that the police is not delivering, that there's the aspect of accountability and transparency, and that before the PCA, the Police Complaints Authority, believe it or not, they have 2,193 complaints from the public over a 5-year period. These are people who have been violated, affected, and aggrieved. And now we are hearing that there's a feud, or we read that there was a feud between the Police Complaints Authority Director and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Association. This is in the public domain. But you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to get into some other matters. While we talk about the ineptitude, the incompetence, the lack of care, the inefficiency of those who are responsible for all our citizens, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to remind you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and the national community as to what this country was asked to do in September of 2015. On the manifesto of the People's National Movement, page 23, the following were written under national security. The police service suffers from a lack of secure leadership. That was in 2015. What have you done since? The PNM will simultaneously reform, upgrade, modernize, and transform our police service. Where? How? Have we seen that? What we have seen is a deterioration of the management in terms of crime, criminality, and the safety and security of our citizens. That's what we have seen. It further stated in the manifesto, the new approach to crime fighting will form the basis of regional and municipal corporations and municipalities. Not one police officer appointed in any of the 14 regional corporations. This will facilitate the establishment and, big word, operationalization of community safety partnerships. Where are the CS? Where's that? You think people believe in anything in here? Is that what you? Is this the contract that you formed with the people of this country that you promised them? Vote for me and I'll do all these things for you. What have you done? And listen, if you think that is all, I just have a little few more to give you. But you know, when people become interested is when crime comes home to you.
Yeah, exactly.
For maximum efficiency, I'm reading from the manifesto, the police service will be strengthened at all levels by the establishment of what? The establishment of a police management authority, which will develop the necessary leadership expertise, uphold accountability. Listen, it's there for us to read. The PNM Manifesto of 2015. Ensure that service delivery is optimized. Listen, I could go on and on, but you know, I have some time. I want to tell you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that you could fool some people sometime. You can't fool them all the time. The time will come, and the old people have a saying, that time longer than twine. You know, one of the strategies I looked at, and it really amazed me. Taking early action to prevent crime. That was the title, you know, in the manifesto, you know. The PNM manifesto. The PNM will tackle youth criminality head on through the implementation of preventative actions.
Silence.
That take into account the broad range of underlying personal low attainment, problematic behavior, bullying, parenting, inconsistent parenting, and so on and so on. But you know what? You cut drastically programs to the youth in this country. $569 million cut from the tertiary sector, and they talk about youth. Poor security at entry points. You know, this might also startle a lot of us. Despite the seizure of 765 firearms in 2016, almost 81% of the murders were committed by firearm. Continuing to highlight the problem of imported and often illegal weapons and firearm smuggling. But you know what is most bothersome? When we find that crimes are committed in our country by persons in the protective services who have loaned their weapons to criminals. That is something that we have to look at. I'm sure the Minister of National Security will be taking serious note of that. So there has been a breakdown really in the police service substantially. And it is very clear that, as my colleague from Naprima keeps saying, the PNM has no plan for crime. No clue, no idea, no accountability, no responsibility, and yes, no governance. That is what we are seeing. We hear about a 10-point plan. Well, I don't know how many points that now reduced to, including things like the DNA. We have been hearing about from the Minister of National Security, member for Point Fortin, that the DNA custodian has now been in place. But I don't know how soon or how long we'll have to wait to make sure that we look at the implementation of it. But I want to also indicate that there are many types of crimes, whether they're murders, crimes against women, crimes against children, cybercrime, terrorism. And talking about cybercrime, I don't know if we are ready in Trinidad and Tobago prepared to deal with a serious cybercrime attack that could cripple our entire country. We have seen what happened to British Airways recently. We have seen increasing what's happening to other countries in the world. Even Parliament in Britain. US election. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I wish to indicate from the records, and this is a report from the Trinidad Express of December 24, 2016, that there were 200 reported cases of missing women in Trinidad and Tobago for 2016 between the ages of 12 and 40. There were 56,744 domestic violence cases filed from January 2015 to December 2016. And of course, one of the ways in which we could deal with that problem, we were advised that women need to choose their companions wisely. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I also want to indicate that in terms of the crimes against children, that since 2 years, 2015 to 2017, I'm looking at May 2015 to 2017, since the 2 years in operation of the Children's Authority, they have received more than 40,000 calls from the public. Of those, 10,000 have been identified as potential cases of child abuse. Mr. Deputy Speaker, for this year alone, 2017, so far, 10 persons under the age of 18 have been killed. And therefore, while we talk about the causes of crime, we will talk about the cost of crime. And the causes of crime will be also school dropouts. We heard recently that there were approximately 11,000 students over a period of time who were school dropouts. What is going to happen to these children? Who is looking after them? And we're looking anxiously to see the results of the Laventille School Improvement Project, which could be replicated in other parts of the country based on its success. Unemployment. We'd have seen as well, where people who are unemployed seeking out a living, there was a taxi driver in Claxton Bay who was murdered, plying his trade. Break down the judicial system. That is all pervasive. It's all around us, ubiquitous, one may say. You read about it all the time. Poverty. And we know that poverty is hell, but poverty also leads to crime. And witness protection. People are talking about the trust in the police service. whether they can give information, and before you reach home from the police station, the person who you reported it to already know. And you can lose your life. As a matter of fact, some people have said that when they go to police stations and make a report on some accident or somebody, it seems as though they're the criminal instead of the person who are reporting the matter. And therefore, we need to look at, if you're looking at customer service or you're looking at improving, even recidivism is very important. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I conclude because of the time, I want to say that 21 months of PNM rule and crime is a runaway horse. Young women are disappearing each day. Armed robberies on the rise. Murders are a daily norm. In fact, some people tell me that they are hearing no murder last night on the TV. Yeah. As if people are looking forward to this thing.
They expect.
We have become so cold-blooded in a society. Citizens are living in fear like never before. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to say as well that the National Security Council has to also step up to the plate. Either do your work or find somebody else to replace you who will do the work. The question is, what inroads have the PNM made on the detection rate?
Member, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
But I want to say in that 2 minutes that cabinet reshuffle, those solve and fix crime. It's a failure to address the crime. We have had cabinet changes in 2015. And it seems as though the new fad in the cabinet is have 3 in 1. So you have 3 ministers in one ministry, in national security. Now you have 3 in the Attorney General's office. So there may be more 3 in 1, but they have 2 in a number of other areas. So we had cabinet reshuffle in 2015, 2016, 2017, and no difference. The government is clearly incapable, unable, clueless, and most of all, don't have a plan after 21 months. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I conclude, I want to say that on behalf of all of us, and I in particular, strongly commend and support the motion by my colleague, the member for Napariman. I thank you.
I recognize the member for Laventille West.
Thank you very warmly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I make my first presentation in my new posting. Yes.
Silence.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the future is beautiful and bright, the way I see it. The member for Chaguanas East just completed his intervention in this private member's motion. And he began, well, he concluded by talking about reshuffle. I want simply to remind my friend that the biggest reshuffle that we can recall took place on September the 7th, 2015. And the people of Trinidad and Tobago reshuffle every one of them.
What is the size of the cabinet?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I too would like to, and differently from my friend from Chaguanas East, I hate to infer this implication, but I feel obliged. I too would like to express deep and sincere condolences to the family, the parents, the family and the friends and the schoolmates of Videsh Subar, that youngster who, like so many others in this country and in this world, have lost their innocent little lives. I was telling Minister Maxi Coffey and Mr. Leons over lunch earlier today that when I was a boy, I never one day, we made mischief, we roamed the Queen's Park, Savannah, the hills of Laventille, Gonzales, St. Anne's, for mango, for guava, everything. And I never one day in my childhood lived with the fear that I would be killed. I never one day feared that my father would be killed. Today in Trinidad and Tobago and in this world, I am sure children carry the burden daily.
Again, members, please, I would like to hear the discourse of the member for Laventille West and the little, remarks. Please, let's desist. Proceed.
I would like to express condolences and to all the families over all the years, as far back as we could have recalled, who would have suffered similar loss. But frankly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the very plaintive, dramatic presentation with the gory details doesn't really directly help us. It requires far more than emotions in order to deal with this problem. And it is a moving target. It is not something static that you could deal with once and for all. It's a constant work in progress, and you got to continue. My friend spoke of the detection rate. Yes, it is abysmally low. That is not new in Trinidad and Tobago. That was a story we've been living with now for the past 15 years, including their time in government. But this is not about who in government and who not. That is the story of Trinidad and Tobago. It is unfortunate. And it can be improved because there are scientific methods that are applied in other parts of the world. They say when you leave your home in London and you return at 6:37 in the evening after a day's work, having gone into the city of London, you would have been photographed on average 54 times. Wherever you use your fast service card, I've seen the detection officers do it. They can trace your movements if you went to Manchester or Birmingham.
There's a mobile device. Come members, remember, silence or mute.
I've seen them solve crimes. I've seen 8 rape murders solved in London, where the suspect left his leather coat during the winter months on the scene of one of the crimes. And they were able to see from the laundry tag on the inside of that jacket where it was laundered. And they contacted the laundry. And having so done, they were able to look on the laundry's in-house cameras to see who brought it and when. And within 1.5 hours, they arrested the suspect in London. And that took place. The laundry was in Scotland. That happened. I witnessed that. Yeah? So that the scientific methods exist. And we can do better. And we must. And the same thing with the conviction rate, except I want to say to my friend that the question of conviction is now largely a matter for law and law enforcement and the judiciary.
No blame. No blame.
It largely is. And we have to respect that simple truth. Insofar as DNA, one of the scientific methods, one of the better methods that we know to deal with solving crime, the Minister of National Security told us, and proudly and properly so, that it was since he came to office, he took a hold of this regime and ensured that a custodian and deputy custodian has been on the job, put on the job. That didn't happen within recent times. The Minister of National Security did that. And we are now implementing the law. The Attorney General, and I'll join him shortly in doing that for the benefit of the people of this country. We go through the law, the DNA law, which I piloted in the law house back in 2000, and I think it was 2003. And it lived through all the governments since then. And today we are going through line by line, looking at what is authorized and what law enforcement could do, including being able to go into the prison and to take DNA samples from prisoners under the law and matching it with samples you have. You may be surprised to know that you have a man inside of there for larceny, but he could easily have been convicted of 3-4 rapes and probably murders too, using the scientific method. And that is where we are today, getting into that level of minutiae. That escaped them. The only law they focused on was a certain clause 34, a certain section 34. Okay? That's all right. And my friend spoke of trust in the police. Well, yes, trust not only in the police. I was a former police officer, and it pains me. Everything in this society, like the police is a low fence. The first thing come out of everybody's mouth is police, police, police. Oh, yes, it's an important institution. Yes. Mr. Speaker, can you protect me from these, my colleagues next door, please?
Member, you will be protected. Proceed.
I thank you very kindly. Mr. Deputy Speaker, trust is important not only for the police, but for all of us. We had a former Attorney General from their own bosom who could not make 5 years as an attorney general because he was alleged and accused of witness tampering, could not make the cut. And I promise you, for the time I spend there, I will never bring that office into disrepute like they did. And that's the key. And that's the key. And that's the key. It matters not.
Members, I have member for Siparia. Member for Siparia. I'm on my legs. Okay. Thanks. Again, member for Urupuch East. Member for Couva South, member for Naparima. You all have been constantly making little snippets as we continue along in the debate. Please, try and desist. Please try and desist. Proceed.
Vodka, sweetie, if they behave, I'll send it their way. Yeah. And I'm sure that
Member, stand in order. Members, overruled. Proceed.
And I have one made out of Kakapul rum too.
Move on, member.
Thank you very warmly, Mr. Speaker, for your protection. For your protection. As regards my friend from Chaguanas East, raised the question of our sincere and professional promise to the country that we will increase the size of the municipal police organizations by 1,400. That is to say, of the 14 corporations, we will put in 100 police officers. I am happy to report to you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the benefit of my friends, that applications were invited. There were thousands of responses. Exams were undertaken. Those who were successful at the exams, they are now being vetted to ensure that their character records are what we expect in an organization such as that. When that vetting process is complete, they will be physically and psychologically tested. Once they are found successful in those two tests, then we move on to interviews and training, and shortly they will be on the job. I want to congratulate Minister Karim Mohammed, the Minister of Local Government, the Minister of Local Government, who has taken responsibility for this. I thank you very much, and I really would like to congratulate the Minister. He too is on the job, getting the business done. The member for Chaguanas East told us that we cut youth programs by so much. Well, I want to say to him, unfortunately, given the economic circumstances in which we are put, everything and everybody had to get what the Minister of Finance calls a haircut. Everybody had to get, except of course me.
You just get cut.
Because these lucks are with me till death do us part. Till death do us part. Come rain or shine. Yes, yes. So that is the reality, the economic circumstances of Trinidad and Tobago. Only yesterday, the Minister of National Security had unfortunately to tell the country that we're struggling to pay $200 million to maintain 4 helicopters until we are able so to do, and we are satisfied that they are making a direct contribution to the crime prevention efforts in Trinidad and Tobago. And they did not always do that. There was a time when this public perceived that the then Prime Minister was using those helicopters between Trinidad and Tobago like a pram.
Yes, yes.
And it had bar too. And I mean, yes, it had bar, literally.
Member, retract that statement.
Safety bars. I meant safety bars. Should I retract that?
Yes.
No. Unless.
Member, retract the last statement.
Okay, it didn't have any safety bars. That was a metaphor. It's a metaphor. Yes. I withdraw the statement about the bar. Just to press on. Yes. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this motion filed by the member for Naparima tells us, among other things, that we should condemn the government. It tells us that we should condemn the government for its failure to address the rising crime epidemic. It tells us that we should condemn the government because of its inability to present a credible anti-crime plan aimed at preventing, detecting, prosecuting, and rehabilitating the criminal elements. Imagine, this is what this motion calls on us to do. As parliamentarians, we all here have a preferred and privileged view on this society. By virtue of being here, perusing reports on a daily basis, as legislators, listening to each other in these debates and others, in our work in various committees, and of course, by virtue of our contact with our citizens, in our own constituencies and otherwise, from the Parliament, you get a very privileged and preferred view.
Member for Degumate Northeast, silence. I would like to hear the discourse of the member.
You get a very preferred view on the society. I consider...
Silence.
I consider that I have had not only that view, but I share along with some of my colleagues a more special and privileged view than that. Because not only am I a parliamentarian, but I'm a very grassroots man. I am on the ground in my constituency and around the country. Roots, without apology. And I function comfortably everywhere in the society. I happen to have been the beneficiary of years in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, where I was engaged in actually dealing with crime and issues, and towards my later years engaged in training police officers for those activities, in drill and in weapon training and in martial arts in those days. I happen to have qualified myself as a lawyer and practiced at the criminal bar for many years, and interface with criminals and the evidence, or if I may use an old English term, proofs and evidences in many, many trials at the High Court level, in the Magistrates Court, Court of Appeal, and of course, yes, quite successfully too, I might tell you. I happen to have been, and I served as Minister in the Ministry of National Security back in some very heady years between 2002 2007. As well,
Member for Oropouche East. This is the second time verbally that I'm announcing it, even though you have done it more than twice. Chief Whip, let's have a sidebar, please. Proceed.
In discipline. I thank you. As well, I have significant contact with young people all over this country and this region, all over. Interface with large groups of young people, including tomorrow at about 3 p.m. I will be with a group of about 50 young people in the Belmont area and their parents. And right after that, I go to another event where I'll interface with another group, maybe about 100 of them. And we're there. And of course, I represent a grassroots constituency, the constituency of Laventille West. A view from the cabinet allows you as well to see all the policy positions, all the issues of all the ministries in the country. I chair the Joint Select Committee on National Security, and of course, I have had the experience of working with police organizations outside of Trinidad and Tobago in the so-called developed country.
Deputy Speaker, 48-1, we don't want to hear about the minister's experience.
Overruled. Proceed.
Thank you very much. All of that I have done, I have done with dignity, and I have done soberly.
should be the minister.
Yeah? Mr. Deputy Speaker, all of these I bring to discussing this motion here today. Crime is a very, and what I didn't add, in my postgraduate law degree, I did criminology as well. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I got a credit at the University of London and I was supervised. And when I got that, I was supervised. I didn't get it for free. And I must add.
48-1, please. And Rowley knew that.
And I must add again, I was sober.
Member, overruled, proceed.
Very much. Crime is a very... And you were present. Unpresent.
Diego Martin, Northeast, please.
So, Deputy Speaker, crime is a most complex thing. Crime is a very complex phenomenon. And therefore, any simplistic offerings as to solutions is really nauseating and troubling to me. That's the reason why the records of this parliament will tell you I have never accused a government of being responsible for crime. Because I understand bigger and better than that. It don't make sense. And even when the member for Naparima was presenting this motion, I reflected in his Hansard. As soon as he talked about crime and statistics and how much murders take place under the PNM and under the UNC, I shouted dotishness. And it is recorded in Hansard because it is dotishness. I acknowledge the fact.
48-4. Sit down.
Overruled.
He has claimed the label dotishness. But
I have ruled, members, I have ruled, member for Laventille, proceed.
The Deputy Speaker. So discussions, serious discussions on crime as ought to happen in our parliament is not amenable. It is not amenable to simplistic rationale and theory. It is not. It is not. Yeah? By nature, human beings tend to be selfish, possessive, greedy, sometimes wicked, sometimes evil. One philosopher, I think was Locke or Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes, told us that without restriction, without a social contract, without the people adhering to law, life would be brutish, nasty, and short. Recently, the member of parliament for Tobago West, the minister of tourism, she shocked me. We were having a discussion along this line privately, and she said to me, Mr. Hinds, could you imagine what this world would have been had there been no God? Now, I never thought about that before in all my 60 years. I never thought about that. I have never thought about that. But when I reflected on it, yes, this place was going to be brutal. And righteous people would have had to defend themselves against the wicked in ways that we didn't like. It would not be easy, but thank God there is a God. Because it is the knowledge of God and His power that restrains people, many people, causes us to behave in a certain way because of the fear of God. And I can't leave God out of this discussion, because if there was no God, there would be no such fear of God, and therefore life would have been brutish, nasty, drunken, and short. Yeah? So, I thank God for God. All crimes are sins, we know. I'm being disturbed by my friend.
Member for Laventille West. Members, from the speaker's point of view, this is a very serious debate. And I'm thinking that we are going down a road which I really do not appreciate. So let's get back to the business of the House, and to remind you all that we have a particular topic to debate, and let's stay focused and let's look at it from a serious point of view. Member for Laventille West, go ahead.
Thank you. Just wanted to say on that point that had it not been for God, instead of planners, people might be chopping people by the double stack. So let me continue. All crimes are sins. This is a fact. All crimes are sins, but not all sins are crimes. Greed is a sin, but it is not a crime. Adultery is a sin, but it is not a crime. Fornication is a sin, but it's not a crime. Drunkenness may be a sin, but it is not a crime. All crimes are sins, but not all sins are. All crimes are sins. And the book, I came with the book, but I wouldn't waste time to quote it, and it's never going to be a waste of time. But I came with the book of life, and I read there, and in fact it was an officer in these precincts who brought my attention in a similar discussion with him one day on the margins. It was he who told me if I looked to Genesis chapter 6 verse 6, I would see as early as in the book of Genesis, God repented that he made man. God felt sorry that he made man shortly after doing it. Man is not easy, and therefore if crime is a function of sin and the human nature of persons, then it is a very complex issue, not easy to deal with because of the mind and the strength and the depth of man's mind and his heart. In metaphor, not easy. And therefore, we have to think seriously about a whole lot of stuff. Even in heaven, Michael the archangel had to draw his sword and deal with Lucifer, the great and morning star. You know why? Because Lucifer in heaven challenged the authority of God, you know. And he was cast out, the Bible tells us, on earth. Apparently he ended up in Rienzi. But no, sorry. He ended up somewhere. And if it was Rienzi, they get cast out of Rienzi too.
48-1. Member for Laventille West, again, certain leeway. Move on, get back to the seriousness of the debate.
I'm grateful. I'm obliged. I'm obliged. Let me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the motion talks about to condemn the government. I must ask, I tell you this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, on the schedule of duties for the Minister of National Security, there exists the mandate, the observation or the management of public order, so that we understand that. We understand that it is the responsibility of the Minister of National Security, and by extension to maintain public order, which involves and includes managing crime. And the first duty of a police officer is to prevent crime and other infractions of the law in the act. And I remember those words well from my days in that organization. So nobody is saying the government does not have a responsibility. The citizens naturally look to the government for leadership, for protection. That's normal. Easy to understand. But the question must then be asked, who or what is the government? Does the government involve the parliament? Does the government involve the judiciary? There are three arms of the state. The parliament, the judiciary, and the executive. The police service is part of the executive, interestingly enough, because it is not part of the judiciary and it is not part of the parliament. And that's why the Minister of National Security has responsibility for it falling within his own jurisdiction. Yeah? But who or what is the government? Where does government involve teachers? In state schools particularly? And since religion is established under the Constitution and it is supported by the state financially, regularly on an annual and other bases, does government involve the churches and the mandirs and the mosques? Who or what, therefore, is government? These are matters we have to contemplate. And therefore, when my friend, the member for Chaguanas, raised the question of the appointment of a commissioner of police, I recall when I was a senator, an opposition senator, we told the government, I was part of that team. My good friend, let us applaud and congratulate the new Minister of Public Utilities. We were on the team. She was the leader of the team, led by the Prime Minister. And we went and we met with the then government. We shared with them a 10-point plan. The first item on that 10-point plan, we told them categorically, we will give our parliamentary support to change the legislation to appoint a commissioner. No, we promised that. We didn't play play with that. We told them, you bring it to Parliament, you have our parliamentary support, didn't we?
I was here, correct.
Yeah. They did nothing about it. Today the situation is, we are in the government, yes, but we are now relying on the office of the DPA to do what is necessary because the legislation is very complex and very costly to implement. We had told them to simplify it. But to simplify it requires, I remember when it was negotiated in the first place, the member for Siparia was involved in that and saw it as an opportunity when we were trying to improve the police service and its management and to amend the constitution. The member for Siparia extracted a price from the then government and said that we are prepared to support it, but you have to remove your prime ministerial veto. Mr. Manning did that. So they made, and it was the opposition then, led by the member for Siparia, who put in all kinds of things in the legislation and made it complex, where you have to hire a firm to recruit the commissioner and all manners of things. They did that, tying up the country as usual. So who is the government? And we are savvy enough to know, based on their utterances and their postures, if we bring any bill in this house, and we must, and probably will, because there are important measures that the Parliament has a role to play in to protect the citizens from the crimes that this motion speaks about, but we need the support of the other side. And we know from their utterances and their posture, if we come with such bills, we are not likely to get their support. So who is the government? And the intellectual or pseudo-intellectual deceit and hypocrisy troubles me. Troubles me deeply. So, we have a crime epidemic. So the motion calls it. But I'm saying, what we see happening now is not new, member for Chaguanas East. If you look at the headlines in this country for the last 20 years, screaming headlines about crime, who lost the head, which baby get killed. I mean, this is not new. This is not new. Right? And not only to Trinidad and Tobago, you know. In Russia, they may not know. I read about a case in Russia where one man killed 54 people and ate their entrails. Entrails, sorry. Entrails.
Remember thank you. Your 30 minutes has expired. You have an additional 15. Care to avail yourself?
Thank you very much. Entrails. I was so enthralled by what I was saying. So let me press on. Today we have new phenomena on the horizon. Global drug trafficking is becoming more and more sophisticated. I have seen with these eyes the very sophisticated ways drug traffickers get their dirty stuff around the world. Maggie cubes, dinner mints, they do it in strange ways. One woman appeared at Heathrow with a baby tied on her back in their cultural thing from somewhere in Africa. And the custom officer realized that baby didn't move for the last 30 minutes while we were talking, checked it out, only to find that it was a dead baby stuffed with cocaine. That happened. The world has become a frightening place because, as I say, crime is a complex thing. It is as broad and it is as deep as the wickedness of the human spirit and mind. That's the reality. And we come from behind making laws to deal with those evil spirits. This is the reality. Human slavery, slavery from where I have come, from where many of us in this country and this world have come. And we too say, never again. That is taking place today as we speak in this world. There are young men from Trinidad go to Venezuela on some drug deal, and until the drugs are paid for, and the people in South America get their money, they hold a human being in pawn. Not P-O-R-N, P-A-W-N. They keep him as collateral. So mothers in this country not seeing the son for 5-6 weeks don't understand that the little boy hooked up in a coop somewhere in Venezuela, human pawn. These things happening in this place, and terrorism too. right? Cybercrime, the use of computers to perpetrate crime, criminal activity. There's something known as the dark net. You get on the dark net. Well, once you do, I'm warning Trinidad, immediately there are people in this world will know that you went on it and they'll pay attention to you. That's the reality. But this dark net, you could order guns, you could order all manners of profanity, and it's coming to your door. It's coming to your door. Let me take a little bit of what, and my friend from, very quickly, my friend from Naparima, when he presented the motion, he began hypocritically saying, and I quote, "I would like on behalf of all of us on this side to extend best wishes to the MP for Laventille East Mova, my good friend Mr. Leons," that's my own quotation, and I quote again, "who was a recent victim of robbery." Well, it was insincere to start with, because I'm sure he never went privately to Mr. Leons and expressed sadness at what had happened. It was just grandstanding in the parliament. 1. 2, it was not a robbery. He doesn't even understand the law. A robbery is where you use force on a person in order to perpetrate the larceny. That is what robbery is. Larceny from the person. No, it was larceny, member for Naparima. And he called it as well. He went on to say, and we wish him well and express the hope that the burglars, you don't have burglar. There's no burglar, it was midday, the MP Leons. And you know what was hypocritical? Rather than condemn those criminals who broke the MP's car, like Father Harvey, Mr. Leons was in his office at midday that day, serving the people. Young, bright, educated engineer from Southampton University. He didn't come to take anything from Laventille, he came to bring. And while he was doing that, somebody, like they did to Father Harvey in similar circumstances, violated his vehicle and stole therefrom. So it wasn't any robbery and it wasn't any burglary. Next time the member for Naparima plans to speak here, he could come on the margins. I'll give him a basic lecture in law, so he would not embarrass himself.
Be guided.
Yeah. And then the member went on to tell us about, well, he said a whole lot of things. I saw a picture last week, quickly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with a young man who apparently, from the report, lost his life. He went to collect ransom money, the paper said, in the Junction area. But they showed you a picture of him with 2 high-powered rifles on Facebook. I think I saw it on the papers. Guns. Guns out there. I don't want to hear, look, I'm being disturbed. Thank you very much. The Minister of National Security shared some statistics. Weapons used in the commission of murders. Between the 1st of January and the 26th of June, unfortunately, in this bloody place, 245 murders, of which 192 involved the use of firearms, either to demonstrate it or actually use it. 36 was done with sharp instruments, like knives cutting people's throat. Blunt objects, 9. Other, 8. And you could use your bare hands and kill somebody too, you know. So even if you collect all the illegal firearms in the country with the hearts of men, you still have the problem with strangulation and all that. They could use a piece of rope. And there are many things that are not necessarily illegal objects that could be used to kill, including a simple plastic bag over somebody's head, or an overconsumption of alcohol, if you lace the drink heavily enough. All of these things. Alcohol poisoning. Yes. So gun retrieval is a critical thing. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, while we acknowledge that it is the government's responsibility and the Minister of National Security is responsible for public law and order, the reality is also and equally to be known that the police service is the organization in Trinidad and Tobago that is tasked with the responsibility of carrying out that executive function. And therefore we have to focus on the police, but not just to condemn and criticize idly, but to support them, provide the resources, and to provide the training opportunities, and to deal with issues. I, for my part, and the government, we are trying to rid this place of illegal firearms. 745 in a year seems to me like child's play, because there appears, from what I'm hearing and seeing, to be far more illegal guns out there. I had the benefit, as I say, of working for 3 days with a police unit or 2 in Halifax County in the United States. And I'll tell you this. I came back here and I told my Prime Minister, when because it was he who sent me on that exercise, And I told him, from what I have seen in terms of efficiency, and this is not to condemn the police service here, because I know they try their best, they work hard. But not enough. Clearly not enough. When I saw how they behave in Halifax, I told my Prime Minister, it appears as though one police there is worth about 10 police here. I said that because the way they use the technology and the way they do their thing. So let me just press on. So the key issues will have to be education, which will include civility, compassion, and lawful means of earning livelihood. We think, and we are trying to create, notwithstanding the troubles of the Minister of Finance in today's day, opportunities for all in Trinidad and Tobago. No one could be heard to say that there are not legitimate, lawful opportunities for earning income in Trinidad and Tobago. Nobody must be able to say that. We need laws, and therefore we need the support of our friends. Parliaments have to play a role in dealing with this. But you can't come hypocritically to condemn the government. I ask again, who is government? Does it include the Parliament? And the answer is yes. It does. But they will tell you when you go to them, that is the government business. Our job is to scrutinize and our job is to condemn. That's what they'll tell you. They don't understand. Enforcement is another key thing. You heard Chaguanas East talk about the graffiti issue in Singapore. Yes, a police lieutenant in Miami saw the signs, don't feed these alligator crocodiles there on the Miami Everglades. This happened last year. I took good note of it. He went and broke the law and fed them. One of them took off his left hand clean. And while he was in the hospital, a police lieutenant, while he was in the hospital waiting for discharge, he found himself under police guard, and as he walked out, he was charged for breaking that law. And he lost his job. In Trinidad, if he loses his hand, people will say, well, he done lose his hand already, the police might walk away. Law enforcement is critical. And that's one of the issues that we have to work on. And that's one of the issues that my new responsibility will permit me to pay some attention to. And then I intend to use, we, the Joint Select Committee on National Security, we have already begun, and we intend to continue using that platform to demand from the law enforcement in this country and those concerned to give us some more effort, some more blood in dealing with this executive function on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. As for the judiciary, a couple of weeks ago I saw someone fined $2,500 for possession of arms and ammunition. I almost cried. The street is that you pay about $7,000, $8,000 for one. That fine is less than even the cost of buying the illegal gun. When the police spend hours doing surveillance work, intelligence work, nurturing it, watching it, all of that, court time and all of that, to find somebody $2,500, and I'm calling on the judiciary, they have a role to play. You can't be doing that. There has to be consistency in sentencing. You could sentence somebody for up to 25 years for illegal arms in the country if it is charged indictably. Give it to them and rehabilitate them inside too, because it is too prevalent. The 4 people who encountered Father Harvey, every one of them had a gun. 3 of them, and when they couldn't kill him, from the reports we got, they called for their boss, who came on the scene. He's lucky to be alive. God bless his soul. Yeah? God bless him. So therefore, we all have a role to play, and the citizens too. Let me give you 2 quick examples before I close. I saw on, someone sent me a very horrible video on my Facebook, or one of them. And I saw a young girl in school uniform having oral affairs with boys in the school. It was just a horrible thing. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago. It pained my heart because I know that young lady has to live with that once it was recorded for the rest of her life. And I had a case where a woman at the age of 35 killed a man who was tormenting her about something that happened when she was 14. I defended her in the court. She cut his hand clean off. He tormented her all through her life. Fortunately, she won the case. So I felt for that young lady, and I felt for the young men too, because if they were conscious, they wouldn't engage themselves in that. Anyway, you know what I did? I didn't just watch the video and leave it alone. I contacted the Children's Authority. I contacted Minister Ayana Webster Roy, she put me in touch with the Children's Authority, and they acted promptly and professionally. They have identified the young girl, they have identified the boys, they have identified their parents, and they are now the beneficiaries of counseling and training and treatment. Yeah? And then I heard about another case in my own constituency where 2 children, 12 and 13, are virtually at large in the community and big men abusing them. The Children's Authority is onto that too. And that's what I want the citizens to do. Follow my example. Something comes to your attention, deal with it. Deal with it. And I conclude. I hear my friend talking about demotion. Well, let me tell you, in the words of Freddie McGregor, when big ships sailing on the ocean, we don't need no promotion. Rastafari. Rastafari. We don't need no promotion. Yeah? I actually, they say, you know, they say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the story is never completely told. The story of a hunt is never completely told unless you hear the version of the hunted. But let me give you the version today. 2 more minutes. About 2 months ago, I went to the Prime Minister and volunteered for this job because I want to do something. He agreed with me. He told me we'll do it at the end of June. And I am quite happy and willing to join the Attorney General and the government of Trinidad and Tobago to deal with it. And I wish my friend, the member for Port of Spain South, the very, very best in the thing, and I assure her she will get my full support because we work as a team and on we go. God bless you. I thank you.
I recognize the member for Siparia.
Thank you very much, Madam. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute on a motion filed by my colleague, the member for Naparima. And I think it is important for us to get back to what this motion is about. Yes. Because for the last 45 minutes, a matter that is of serious concern in our country, a matter in which everyone, I believe, woke up yesterday morning after 21 months of brutality. But I think every woman, every mother, every parent, the pain, you feel that pain in your belly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. When you see the photographs that have been shared on the social media of young Videsh, and we see where our country has reached to the slaughter of the innocents, the slaughter of young children, how many children have been slaughtered in our country? Women, the elderly. And therefore, the entertainment show put on by my colleague for Laventille West really fails to take...
For she imputed improper motive.
Proceed.
Thank you. Really shows the total lack of caring, compassion for the victims of crime in our country. And this motion was for us to be able to pay attention and recognize the horror and the fear that ordinary citizens in this country live in and undergo on a daily basis. And I don't think it is enough for any member, shuffled or reshuffled or to be shuffled. That's not the issue. Whether you were shuffled on the I-Man show, that you demonstrated was I. This was not a job interview. This was not to demonstrate, but look, even though I've been shuffled and licked up, I am great, I am great, I am great, and with the nasty half-truths and innuendos pelted across the floor. This was about the fear, the safety and security of citizens. And the member failed to recognize that it became a big joke and all his colleagues were so busy. Yeah. That's why I use the analogy of entertainment, sir, Deputy Speaker, because that is what it appeared to be. So first of all, we were subjected by the honourable member to the I-Man show. And then we were subjected to anecdotal references of gruesome incidents around the world, in London, in Australia, everywhere. And what about here in Russia? What about Trinidad and Tobago? And all these gruesome incidents, the minister is very clear. that he's aware of all these gruesome, heinous criminal acts.
But he has no
feelings. Gives us, first of all, no feelings because of a joke, but second, no plan, not an idea, nothing of how we could deal with this problem. And so he proceeded to blame, of course, always, blame us, blame the partnership. Talked about the Commissioner of Police and the committees and how we were working together. I was way back in opposition then, led by opposition leader Basse Pandey and so on. Yes, we were there. I think the member Ruka Maloney was on that committee, member for Port of Spain, South, my colleague. We welcome you to high up on the benches, madam. And I wish you good luck in your ventures because, as you know, this job is not easy. So good luck as you go ahead. And I doubt the member for Port of Spain South will have to spend an Iman show for 45 minutes to show her qualifications because the woman is qualified and I wish her good luck. So, blame game, blame the partnership, blame the police. It almost came close to blaming God. Remember, almost came close to blaming God. But we must always remember that God helps those who help themselves. And therefore, I think the member totally failed to keep within the confines of this motion before this honorable chamber and to afford any hope or comfort to citizens. And you know, today, Mr. Speaker, we have to stop this, you know. We really have to stop this blame game. The Honorable Prime Minister tells us, well, look, what can a government do in raising citizens and so on? We can't ban knives and cutlasses. Well, that is so totally true. And let us remember the member for Laventille, he has spent time trying to ask us, who is the government? The man is in government, the member is in government, but he's asking his whole parliament, who is in government? And if you do not understand that you are in government and you are in charge, well, Lord, we're in a really, really deadly place. So we have to stop this blaming. Okay, I take all the blame in the world. The partnership, we take your blame. But what is happening now, from September 2015 to now, is in your hands. The blood is on your hands. Come now to do your work. We had our chance, and I'll talk about what we were able to do and what we were able to achieve.
Members, please. I need to hear the discourse of the member for Siparia, and I would like you all to listen in silence.
And this is what the motion says. Be it resolved that this House take note and express its horror at the exponential growth in the crime rate manifested by historic murder rates, violence against the person and property, and inexplicable disappearance of citizens. This is this is one of the resolutions in the motion that is before our House. But did we hear any horror? Did we hear of any plan? The motion goes on further to say, be it resolved that this House condemns the Prime Minister and the government for failure to address the rising crime epidemic and inability to present a credible anti-crime plan aimed at preventing, detecting, prosecuting, and rehabilitating the criminal elements. That's what we are here to try to do today, Honorable Deputy Speaker. And I think anybody who was listening to the member for Laventille West would have been so very disappointed. You know, someone sent me a text that said they wondered if the member was suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. You know, you get such a battering, but you still come and sing the praises of your captors. I know, shuffle once, twice, three times, and then come in here to throw these remarks across the road. Give us no plan. And you know, I wondered, after the member gave all those anecdotes and so on, why it is he wasn't put in the Ministry of National Security? Because he gave his qualifications, a policeman, he knows about fighting crime, he knows about, but nothing, you know, why not National Security then? Because surely with the kinds of qualifications he boasted of about himself, perhaps we would have had some more help in dealing with the crime situation. But instead, his contribution today, I think, will confirm in the minds of many the reason why he's been shuffled not once, but twice, and will be shuffled again. He accuses the former Attorney General of not lasting a 5-year term, but this Honourable Minister could not last
5 months.
Months in one ministry or the other ministry. No, I don't know the internal workings. That is the remit of the Prime Minister to give or to take when it comes to ministries. But, you see, I think it may confirm, as I say, why the minister has been moved about like a political, sorry, I wouldn't say football, but in that regard. Then we go on to his words. Members got up, whether it was threats or whatever, but it was really just being nasty in my respectful view. But I want to tell you, I have been in politics, and I call my eye lady right now, in defense. I have been in politics for a large number of my very senior years, maybe 28 or 30 years. And so if words and lies and half-truths and innuendos could knock me down, I would be dead and buried at this point. I'm not going to be frightened by the kinds of allegations that the member continues to make. And so, let's get to where we are. Those are just some rebuttals on what the honourable member said. Member talked about scientific mechanisms and tools for dealing with crime, and talked about London. Again, well, what is happening here? What is that? To say that's happening in London. The minister spoke about law, he talked about law enforcement, he talked about the judiciary, about the DNA, member talked about education and laws and enforcement, and all of these, they are just the buzzwords. There is nothing specific to say, look, this is what we will do. This is how we will fight the crime. This is how we could try to prevent the slaughter of young children in this country, the slaughter of women, the brutality that we are facing at this point in time. And you see, the member then tells us the only law that the partnership did was concentrated on something called Section 34. Not for the first time. Again, that's another one of their buzz mantras. Section 34. But let me repeat again today, not one person has been freed or taken out of the justice system because of that Section 34. When it was brought to our attention, we came here and we repealed it. We sat over an extended period of time, repealed this that the member is speaking about. But that is not strictly true too. Because there were many laws, and I didn't intend to go there. And you know, if there is one person I think who has been trying, but only with restriction in the remit that minister has, would be the Honourable Attorney General. I watched the Parliament channel last night. And I mean, they were there in the Senate, and you thought you'll never hear me say this, but I'll say it with a pinch of salt, because whilst you have done well, there is much to be done. And I watched that Senate proceeding last night, and you all were there from 2:30 until about, after about 10:30, I just take off the volume, but I kept the screen on. And they were there. And from every senator, a barrage coming on amendments in the committee stage. But I saw the Honourable Attorney General batting in his crease. So I don't think you need any help from Laventille. I think you can bat for yourself. Sometimes you will score 6. Sometimes you will score a 6 and so on. So, but in one arena.
Member, again, the member for Siparia is capable. She needs no assistant. Proceed.
Thank you very much. And I'm saying, the honourable member, I'm still responding, sir, to comments raised by the member from Laventille, that we only concentrated on this Section 34 and did nothing else. And that's what took me into the legislative agenda. Whilst the government has done very well, and that's why I mentioned the work being done by the Attorney General, with respect to the legislative aspects, and as I said, there's still much more to be done. Because whilst it is, with the laws, we look at the parliamentary records, we would see that the agenda put out by the government contained about 49 pieces of legislation to be done between 2015 and 2017. We are nearing the end. I think by next week the Parliament will be shut down. We come back in September maybe for a week, and so the second session of the Parliament would be, of this 11th Parliament, will be completed. And so whilst the government had given its target of about 46 pieces of legislation, give or take 46 pieces of legislation, the government has not been able to meet that target thus far, despite, I mean, a lot of work having been done. And those were the main bills coming, that legislative suite that the Honourable Attorney General speaks about. So we would see at the end of the second session, or near the end of the second session, the government would have done, out of those 46 pieces, or targeted, would have thus far, as of date, would have thus far actually passed, have ascended to, or proclaimed, I think it's about 15. Maybe by September, I know the AG is working very hard, that more will be done. In the 2 sessions we were, and I made this comment in relation to Laventille saying we did no law, only 34. By the end of our second session, we had completed, passed assented and or proclaimed 32 pieces of those. And out of those, a large number had to do with the criminal justice system and so on. So I wish the AG good luck, because I think that is the one arena in which I can see some attempt being made in the fight against crime and criminals. However, in the other areas, we are not seeing a similar kind of exercise. So let's see what the government had planned to do. The government had planned to do, as my colleague from Chaguanas East shared with this parliament, what did the government come to the population with? The government came with its manifesto plans, and some of those were shared by Chaguanas East. However, before the manifesto even came, the government, then in opposition, gave us what they called a 10-point crime plan. Then some of that was translated into their 2015 manifesto. And then some of that was translated into Budget 2015 and their Budget 2016. But regrettably today, apart from, as I say, some in the legislative arena, those other initiatives in the fight against crime have not materialized. And if we were to take a scorecard and look at it, the government has not met or has not kept its own promises, but broken those promises when it comes in terms of the fight against crime. So let's see what some of those were. One, the member for Laventille spoke about the Commissioner of Police and what happened with that. So let's see, 10-point crime plan, Commissioner of Police to be appointed. Well, that has not happened. We are 21 months into administration. For whatever reason, it has not happened. 2, in the 10-point crime plan, manpower audit for the police service. I am informed that this is in progress. So there has been some progress on that aspect. Activate laws to establish municipal police in 14 local government bodies. This was in the crime plan, 10-point. My colleague said also in the manifesto and also in the budget speeches, but this has not happened, failed. On the scorecard, the government has failed and broken that promise made in the 10-point and in the manifesto. Amend laws to give greater powers to the Police Complaints Authority. 10-point crime plan, and thereafter manifesto and budget statements thus far fail. This is another broken promise on the part of the government in the fight against crime. 5, establish a joint select committee to review, oversee and monitor police programs and effectiveness of security systems for crime fighting. Now the government has been using the existing JSC, or national security. And when we went into crime talks with the government agreed that it would take away the chair of this National Security Joint Select Committee. Yes, the government gave the undertaking because it was felt that you cannot have a member of the executive in charge of the parliamentary committee on such a sensitive matter. Well, that was done sometime last year. To date, that's another broken promise because the member for Laventille West, as a member of the executive, continues to chair that Committee on National Security. Another broken promise. In the 10-point crime plan, and I make these things, Honourable Speaker, I raise these because thus far the government has not articulated any new plans to fight crime. It was a 10-point plan, the manifesto and what was said in the budget. But thus far, as I say, there's nothing else except what came out yesterday. Apart from legislation, I'm still leaving the legislation aside, apart from what the Prime Minister said yesterday, which I'll come to, which is the latest development. So let's see here now. Create a witness tampering offence. Broken promise again. Has not happened, and in fact, no action appears to have been taken. Create the offence of unlawful eviction. You know, when I was Prime Minister, the Honourable Opposition Leader, today's Prime Minister, asked to meet me very urgently, and I think I met him within the same day or the next day for this urgent meeting. And the Honourable Opposition Leader, Dr. Keith Rowley, he came to see me so urgently to say, listen, we have to do something about these home evasions. Let us work together to create the offence of unlawful eviction. Okay, I'm gone. We didn't do it. Okay? The government comes in their 10-point crime plan, in their manifesto. To date, another broken promise by that government and from the opposition. Then, 9, sustained implementation of the Ryan Report for Development of East Port of Spain. Nothing. Another broken promise. Nothing. Acceptance of the CCJ as final court of appeal. Nothing. Another broken promise. So these were some of the, I think there was one more to make the 10-point crime plan. Review anti-gang legislation and ensure it is effective. Well, the legislation was not reviewed, if you remember. When the anti-gang legislation came, it was not reviewed. You brought it back and said, listen, that's yours. So you know what? You handcuffed it, passed it exactly as it was. No. So that as well was not done. That's a 10-point crime plan. 10-point crime plan. Time. Just leave the time, I can keep watching. Then came the manifesto, which my colleague has shared. Establish community safety partnerships. Broken promise by the government. Establish police management agency. Broken promise by the government. Establish a joint protection agency. Broken promise. Establish a police service inspectorate. Broken promise. Establish the office of the DNA custodian. I think Minister of National Security, I think that may have been done. Pursue ISO certification of the Forensic Science Center. After a walkout, we had the pathologists walking out. You had one of the pathologists talk about the madness about transporting dead bodies across the water to Tobago to do, post-mortems and so on. Of course, pursue ISO certification of Forensic Science Center, another broken promise. Develop a policy on prison management. To the best of my knowledge, another broken promise. And again, I would seek through you to remind the Honorable Attorney General, now you have a little help, extra help from Laventille. Can you kindly look at the prison rules? Because we have them sitting there, they were drafted, maybe reviewing them, but we really need these things are what, over 100 years old? Correct. Okay. Well, the AG threw across, please, we need to get those prison rules in place. So those are the manifesto promises. So first 10-point crime plan, then manifesto promise, then, I'm just looking at the time, right, 407, right. Then now we come to the budget statements. And after over $10 billion in expenditure later, from September 2015 to date, again the budget promises have not materialized. Other broken promises coming out of the budget statement. So we would have seen, for example, budget promises. And then we will move on. Budget promises. Establish a joint protection agency. Promised in 2015-16 budget. Promised again in the 17-18 budget. Again, another broken promise. Establish a police management agency to strengthen many aspects of police service operations. Again in the 2016 budget, 15-16. Again in the 17-18. Again, broken, not done. So even on their own targets in the fight against crime, sir, we have seen a failure on the part of the government to deal with the issue of crime. Establish community safety partnerships, mentioned before, 10-point plan, manifesto in the budget 2016. Again promised in 2017. Up to date, nothing, broken. Establish a police service inspectorate. Sounds familiar because it was in the 10-point, it was in the manifesto, 16 budget and in the 17 budget. Again, not there. Re-engineer the criminal justice system, and I believe this is where the Honorable Attorney General, and now his additional help, has been working assiduously. I wish him good luck with that, with the legislative aspect. Strengthen prison management. This is in the budget now, in the budget promises. Prison management, focus on health services, rehab, security management services, and prison officer security. Best of my memory, and I stand to be corrected, it appears that there was one consultation held somewhere in April 2016 on this whole issue of prisons. So that too has not happened in spite of the various promises. So it's clear that the government attack on criminals and crime is concentrated on legislation. As I say, nothing is wrong with that. But then you come every budget with the same thing. There's a new measure which is not to be found in any of the previous plans of the 10-point and manifesto and so on. Something called decentralization of police forces. I don't know what it is, but that mystery item was said to be in the planning or implementation phase when the budget was delivered. So when we look at the billions being spent, and we talk about it all the time, we are not seeing any of these plans bearing any fruit. And I want to look at then, what are the statistics to bear out that whatever the government has done or not done, the impact on crime has been deadly. The impact on criminals has not been deadly. So that we see Honourable Member for Laventille West stood up at the very start of his statement, contribution, and said, the future is bright. The future is bright, and the question, it may be for him, for that member, sir, but can I ask, is that future bright for the 247 persons murdered this year and their families? Is that future bright for young Vidation, his family? Is that future bright for all these others, so many? The future is not bright because the fear is there. My colleague from Chaguanas West has already shared a lot of statistics I will not repeat. But where we are seeing the madness, as the Newsday editorial tells us, deadly state of madness. Newsday, today's date, Friday, June 30, 2017. No number of cabinet changes will make a difference to the population of Trinidad and Tobago unless they affect the ability of the state to effectively combat the crime situation. And that situation is one which, judging from what unfolded in Malabar on Wednesday continues to reach new lows. We express our deepest sympathies to the families and all who have been affected. And then we go from that, and the editorial talks about other cases or horrendous murders. And then we reach where the murder toll of this year is higher than it was at this time last year. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'll go even further. It is not just higher than this time last year, but let's look at it. The murder toll in this country, I will take you back to 2013. In 2013, the murder toll estimated as at June for 2013 was 186.
Silence on the government side.
Estimated June 2014, 216. Estimated as a June, when I say estimated, these are numbers given from TTPS website. As a June 2015, 196. As a June 2016, enter the red and ready, 229. When we left office as of June, it was 196. There were others from June to September. 2016 as of June, 229. Where are we today? As of June 2017, 248. 248. We look at that then. Then we look at since 2015 September. 2015, September, December, 141, 2016, 463, 2017, 248. A total of 852 murders in this country since September 2015. An average of over 40 persons murdered per month, Deputy Speaker, per month. So obviously something is not working, and it cannot be that the partnership is to blame or anybody here, because we are not in charge. The member is asking who is in the government, doesn't seem to realize that he is the government. And that's right, he is the government. And therefore, the government is in charge and needs to step up to the plate to deal with what the editorial of the news is, a deadly state of madness in our country. So those are some of the statistics. And these stats recited many times before will show that whenever the PNM is in power, the murder rate increases, the murder numbers increase. The highest ever was in 2009, I believe. 2008, 550. 2009, 508. Fell in 2013, 14, we have 203 and so on. 403, and back with the PNM in power. 2016, 463. Today, 27, 248 and climbing. Those are the numbers. So those are the hard facts. We can't change that in any way. So these were the promises, 10-point plan, manifesto, budget promises, and all those promises, apart from maybe, as I say, the attempt for the DNA person, the curator, to be appointed, and for the law try to be changed and working the commissioner. Really, none of those matters have happened. The government has totally failed to keep its own promises. So fast forward now to today. What is the government saying as to how they will deal with the crime scourge? Because the member Laventille fully recognizes, when he talks about all these deadly incidents and so on, he fully recognizes, look, things are really bad, crime is really bad. Without saying so, he's admitting it is really, really bad. And talk to anybody, John, public out there, everybody in the country is really terrified. And it's not just with the murders, you see, the serious crimes have also increased. The home invasions. A colleague of mine, I prefer not to name that colleague today because I would not want to jeopardize his own safety and security. But a robbery, a home invasion took place last night at 8 p.m. Mr. Deputy Speaker, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. invaded the home, 2 homes away, invaded that home, tied up guns, whatever happening, at 8 p.m. in the night. So it is no longer, we used to say, well, look, those gangsters, those wicked gangs, you know, they are not normal people. We moved it away, and you know, I was very impressed by a young man. In that same Anthony Bourdain show, where the comments were made, unfortunate comments, we have some said, but I suppose in some ways the comments that were made were totally true. They were true, that was made by the in the Syrian Lebanese community. Those comments were true, that's fine. But I was very impressed by a young man from Freetown, Freetown Collective. Thank you, sir. Freetown Collective. When he was interviewed and they asked him about crime, and he said, the crime is not just about poverty, you know. He said the crime rates, they are about exclusion. Yep. And we need to understand, because people have been poor in this country, not today, not yesterday. People have been poor, oh God, talk about from independence, from before independence, not just poor, slavery, indentureship, we've been exceedingly poor. But the crime rates were not what they are today. And what this guy was saying, from the Freetown Collective, he said, it's not just about poverty, you know, it's about exclusion. And therefore, there is a serious issue in our country about equity and equitable distribution of resources. Yep. So while the comment made on the Bourdain show appeared to be something about ethnic and whatever, it is not really about that. At the end of the day, it's about class inequity and inequitable distribution of resources. The haves and the have-nots, but coming from the inequitable distribution of resources. Now, what is the role of a government in a situation of the haves and the have-nots and so on? Or the role of the 1%? And what is the role? The role of the government is to act in such a manner that you try to give an equitable distribution of the resources of the country insofar as the state has control of those. And you cannot have that happening. When you have squatters, you're sending people to break down their homes. That is not equitable. Cannot be. Member, yes, sir.
Your initial 30 minutes has expired. You have an additional 15. You care to use it?
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
I thank you very much. So I'm talking equitable distribution. If we want to deal with crime and criminality, yes, the legislation would help, but we cannot have, recently in the floods when they said squatters can't get nothing. But the squatters good enough to go by to look for votes, huh? And pay property. And the squatters good enough to pay property tax. But when they were suffering in the time of greatest need, sorry, no squatters. We can't help you. Masses of thousands of people, no help. And once we continue with this focus that is not people-centered, people-driven, if you want to call it, then we are going to end up with exclusion of persons and people, and then you're going to end up with that with people feeling excluded and not wanted, or don't feel they have a part to play, or they have a role to play, or any opportunities to benefit from the system. Then what will they do? They will try to break down the system. Now, ethnic tensions are very dangerous, very divisive. We have had those tensions simmering for the longest while. I think this recent Bourdain story has brought it up again. So we've had ethnic tensions and so on for a while, but thank God we've been able to live harmoniously, what you say, in our own diversity, tension simmering, but that has not exploded. What explodes here and exploded, and not just here but in the rest of the world, please, because what? It is when there is economic inequity. That is where you get explosion, where there's economic, when it's based on class. It's not on race that the thing works on. It is economic inequity. And that is one of the things that the Freetown gentleman, when he spoke, he didn't put it in all those words, but in terms of how we deal with it. Now, the Sullivan-Ryan report had given us some things to deal with. and ways to go forward. Maybe we failed and we didn't do it, but this government, before becoming government, committed to seeing how to help young black youth. How can we help them to take them away from a life of criminality? Because you see, remember, I'm saying, what has the government fast forward? 10-point plan, manifesto, budget promises, 99.9% broken, fail. Fast forward today, I was saying, we are talking again, if the reports are correct, the Honorable Prime Minister, first of all, continues to say that the government is not into policing, that is for the TTPS, and every opportunity government gets. What do they do? Blame the TTPS. But today, the member for Laventille, who prides himself on being a very good lawyer, and I will not doubt him at this point in time, was very clear. Yes.
Be charitable.
Just the chair member.
Yes, sir. I do not believe, the honourable member, in talking on that issue, gave us a certain take on it, and which I'll come back to in a moment. I got slightly distracted here. So, how are we fighting the crime? Legislation, yes, but again, all the legislation thus far has to do after you're there. After you're done there, as we say. I say, Trinidad, you're done there. So all of it is in the justice system. It is not about the prevention. It is not about the prevention at all, or helping to prevent. And Honourable Prime Minister, as I say, on the case of the TTPS, but you are in charge. And today, that's the point I got slightly swayed from, that the minister who spoke before me said that the TTPS is part of the executive. Now, the TTPS has its own budget. The changes we made, the same law that the honourable member said that us in the opposition convoluted and demanded all kinds of things and parts to be put in place, of course, were passed by the entire parliament of the then government. Mr. Manning was the leader, and some of us who are here were in opposition. When we passed it, in that legislation as well, sir, for how the TTPS is to operate and what is to be done, that is when we amended the Constitution. We amended the Police Service Act to give independence and autonomy to the Commissioner of Police to be able to manage the police service, to have a budget of their own, the TTPS. Those changes were made, and they were very important changes, because as long as you have to depend on 5 cents, 10 cents for everything, which is where this parliament is in a sorry state, that the parliament doesn't have a budget of its own. The parliament should be autonomous and have its own budget if it is to be a democratic parliament. So the TTPS moved away based on recommendations and the discussions, Aruka Maloney there, Port of Spain North and others, that we were able to give that kind of autonomy. And you remember why, Deputy Speaker? The famous expression where the Commissioner of Police previously would say, toothless bulldog, I'm a toothless bulldog, I can't do anything, toothless bulldog. So we attempted to give teeth to the Commissioner of Police. Now you will say it is the TTPS and the Commissioner of Police has failed, but it was that same Commissioner of Police, the same TTPS, in the time that when we were in office, when we were able to bring the serious crimes down to the lowest ever in 31 years. So it cannot be that the TTPS is at fault or the Commissioner is at fault, same players. It cannot be. It has to do with your management of being in charge and being in government. So, blame the police, blame the partnership. I mean, I see we get blamed for things that happened 20 years ago. The Augusta helicopters, and oh gosh, this thing about helicopter, if the Prime Minister, this Prime Minister, had used those helicopters when he said he couldn't get a flight from Tobago to reach Trinidad to help fraud victims, he would have been on the ground. Helicopters are pram and all this nonsense. Foolishness. It served a purpose. That is the purpose. And so now they're crying about how much maintenance costs for the Augusta Westland choppers were. We inherited that contract. From a previous government. We inherited it, and I have the documents, but time will not permit me, but I do have documents that prove we inherited that. Unlike the OPVs, we were able to get out of the OPV contract, otherwise we have been in a worse position with the OPVs as well. A 5-year contract, 5 years later, these maintenance costs of billions hitting you in the face. So I'm saying we get blamed down the road 5 years, 6 years, 7 years later. I guess they'll be kicking and screaming right down to the next general election, blame them, blame Kamla, blame Munilal, blame Tiwari, blame Suraj, blame the partnership, and they will blame everybody except themselves. But the people of this country are not foolish. And the people of this country will give them their comeuppance and will know where to lay the blame. So there we are. The second measure I heard the government announce was the establishment or the hiring of 16. One newspaper, somewhere it was carried, 16. Some said 60 and some said 16. So Minister Young has clarified it is 16. 60. Let's use 60. 60 CSI. Very laudable, and I hope it doesn't take forever and the proper processes are put in place. But again, who is a CSI or what is CSI? Crime Scene Investigator. What does that mean? You're dead already. You're dead. When you go to a crime scene, it means the person is already dead. So laudable, but again, where the measures prior to being dead or being robbed or being raped, where are those measures? And I will be very happy if members from the other side, apart from the legislative, which I have acknowledged, and the attempts being made in the legislative arena, but those are to deal with the criminal justice system, I have seen nothing else coming from the government. And I've seen the broken promises from 10-point plan, manifesto, and from everything else. So you'll ask me then, what did we do and what do I suggest we do? The numbers are there, the stats are there. We brought the serious crime down, to the lowest in 31 years. The lowest in 31 years. That was it. There was like, in some cases, there was like an 85% decrease. Yeah? What did we do? Yes, we passed legislation, I think about 28 pieces of law passed to deal with crime. And in addition, we had non-legislative measures that we put in place. And some of those, this government, unfortunately, has shut down. Some of those, the government has shut down. So while we were able to bring down the crime, putting in some of these other measures, we have seen where the government has shut down these things. Let's take, for example, the Community Comfort Patrol. You see, sometimes the deterrent, it's not ex post facto, after you're dead or robbed or raped, or the case may be. The deterrent has to come before. And even before that, the social programs, which I suppose someone else will speak on because time will not permit me, but, the prevention program, sometimes a high visibility is very important. So we would have had the Community Comfort Patrols. Let me just get my paper with those issues that we were able to put in place. The comfort community patrols. The visibility in those areas was very important and remains important, but it's been scrapped. What did we also do? We established a National Operations Center as the backbone for intelligence gathering and information sharing for collaboration within law enforcement agencies between the TTPS and the TTDF, the police and the defense force. That contributed to a notable reduction in crime in our time. What has this government done? The government has, through the SSA, taken away the National Operations Center as to what it was to be the main coordinated agency for law enforcement and taken it and dropped it into something called the spying agency, the SSA. And we have not heard a word from it. In all the floods recently, no major coordinated agency was responsible when the disaster struck us. So we also set up, well, you had the ODPM, but the ODPM does not have the statutory authority to coordinate and collaborate between the various agencies that are necessary. I think if you ask the Honourable Member of San Fernando West, the Rail AG, perhaps he will give you something on the law with respect to that. We established a National Security Specialized Operations Group. This group comprised members of various law enforcement agencies, again for the collaborative effort to respond to events that would require a higher level of response. We established the Energy Sector Security Initiative, which looked into the protection of critical energy infrastructure. That's very vital, that we, the moment's notice or even with the surveillance that our energy infrastructure is kept safe. Because you blow up one of those, sir, already we have no revenues, no forex and so on, very little, we will have more. So because that energy infrastructure is very critical. So we have set that up. I am also told that this has also been scrapped. We had the relaunch of the E99. Population of TNT had a tool then to report crimes in that E99. We did something which allowed for a heavy increase in law enforcement presence. The famous soldier bill that we brought to the Parliament, which the then opposition, now in government, rejected, was to give us the IATF, the Interagency Task Force, police and army, together with the Coast Guard, for us to have a collaborative effort there and a greater number of law enforcement persons on the ground as a deterrent and even after the fact. So I saw the floods, a disaster.
2 more minutes.
Thank you, sir. The floods, I didn't see that there. And therefore, why don't we just bring out the ITF? Why don't we put out the Army, Honourable Member for Point 14, through you, sir? Why don't we get more boots on the ground so that we can have that as a deterrent as well? The introduction of the Rapid Response Unit, the establishment of a counter-human trafficking unit, and we took all that money that was wasted in illegal sort, and we said we'll give police officers, all law enforcement. We'll take that money we were saving, where we were paying these retired British officers, coming down here and paying them someone $120,000 a month or so. We took that money, we gave every law enforcement officer, what? $1,000 special allowance. We established the surveillance based on the highway. I'm not seeing any of that being done. And many others are passed to my colleague. So some of these measures, the former Minister of National Security passed it on when when the elections were completed and the new government came into office, gave a document which the Captain Garrett Griffith tells me, he sent me a copy, of all the initiatives that had been undertaken and the status of each and the way forward to the Honourable new Minister of National Security, the member for Point 14. So the government is fully aware of all of these. So today then I say that the government is not coming forward with what are their plans. It's not good enough to say you have the architecture and we're getting all of these. And by the way, those boats that we brought, those 12 fast patrol boats, sir, I am very disappointed. They've done well. But what I am very disappointed, I'm told if you go down the islands, down at Stowers Bay, you'll see them parked up for the most of the times. Why? Because the Coast Guard is not being properly resourced with the manpower needed for them. So that is another issue that could be looked at, talking about porous borders and so on. As I close, I commend the members who spoke on this bill. On our side, I commend the member for Naparima, and I ask members to support the motion which is before the House today on the horrible, deadly issue of crime in Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you.
Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as usual, it is indeed a great privilege and an honor to be provided with the opportunity to contribute to this debate on behalf of Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have listened attentively to the contributions by those on the other side throughout the course of this debate. And hopefully, as is becoming usual and my usual methodology, this afternoon, through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would like to speak to all of the civic-minded citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we must be realistic, we must be pragmatic, we must be honest. The issue of crime is not a new issue. The issue of crime is one that plagues most societies in the world. The issue of crime is one that is currently a real challenge here to us, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in Trinidad and Tobago. And I will get into, during the course of my contribution, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the initiatives and what the government has done in the last 20 months and what the government intends to do in the months coming with respect to the issue of crime. But you see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, respectfully, it is important to put it into context and for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to be told the truth, and to be told the truth as to what was discovered by this government when we came in on the 7th and the 9th of September 2015. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, at the outset, I would like to call upon all citizens in Trinidad and Tobago, and again all of the members of this House, all 41 elected members of the House of Representatives, to really look for solutions as to how we can address this crime issue. Because to come here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and to make contribution and submissions as to trying to dismantle what is being done, as to trying to belittle the law enforcement officers, who we as citizens must thank. And I would like to thank the members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the members of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the members of the Strategic Services Agency, for on a daily basis putting their lives at risk for us, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and living up to the motto, to protect and serve. There are elements that are bad apples in those barrels, and hopefully they will be rooted out over time. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is important is that we, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and it is not only a government's issue, as I will soon demonstrate, because there are certain pieces of legislation that require the support of the opposition. There are certain pieces of legislation that require the support of all 41 members of this House for us to be effective and to carry the responsibility to protect the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and to fight crime. You will hear in the coming months, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this government leading the charge with respect to a fight on corruption via the Revenue Service, via legislation which is follow the money legislation, and more particularly, explain your wealth and the turnaround of the burden of proof with that type of legislation. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, to get back to the point, it is important that we recognize as a nation the issues we're faced with. Trinidad and Tobago are very small islands, so by definition, our whole borders are surrounded by water. We're 7 miles from mainland Venezuela, i.e. South America. And therefore, it does not take a rocket scientist, it does not take a person with qualifications in fighting crime to know that the first thing you should do as a small island state is to protect your borders. And one of the best ways to protect your borders is to have proper maritime assets and also air assets. And to recognize that Trinidad and Tobago on the west coast, the Gulf of Paria, the waters are calm, but then there's a south and east coast where we face the Atlantic Ocean, and then to the top, the north, the Caribbean Sea. And those various oceans all carry different types of weather patterns, different water conditions. So it is extremely important when protecting your east coast, south coast, and north coast borders to have a particular type of vessel. And I heard the honourable member, who is a former Chief of Defence Staff, my colleague, the member for Omira Dabadi, Dabadi Omera, sorry, and also we've been told by the honourable member for Point Fortin, who is also a Chief of Defence Staff, tell us the importance of proper maritime assets to protect our borders. The first thing that was done post-May 2010 was the cancellation of the OPV vessels. Those cancellations did leave the borders open. And those borders were left open, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and let the people of Trinidad and Tobago be reminded, until just before the elections of 2015. That's right. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's not about the politicization of crime. It is a fact. With our porous borders, and I think the member for Point Fortin has told us there are over 90 entry points along our coastline. And for 5 years for those borders to be left porous, without 5 years and 5 months for those borders to be left porous, without proper marine assets to secure our borders, I am about to tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to remind them rather, Mr. Deputy Speaker, what that left us with. It allowed a host of illegal arms and ammunition to come into the country of Trinidad and Tobago. And now, after 5 years of a very porous nation, we are left now to work along with law enforcement to try and clean that up and to work with the assets we have. In times of plenty, nothing was done. Now, in times where it is more difficult, we, the government, are taking our responsibility and our duty very, very seriously to provide the resources for law enforcement. Because it's not any member of parliament here, it's not the 41 of us who will go and put our lives on the line on a daily basis. Not one of us will go out on the streets and walk the beat to find the criminals. So let us put it in the proper context. I've heard those on the other side criticize the Honorable Prime Minister for saying continuously that it is the police service of Trinidad and Tobago that is charged with the responsibility to fight crime. That is a fact. That is a fact. The government's interaction comes from the level of the National Security Council and also from the Ministry of National Security. But the Minister of National Security is not the one who goes and seeks to detect crime and to prevent crime. We are at a policy level. I hear my friend the spinner who is spinning wheels. And what is it that he did to help in the contribution? Absolutely nothing.
Again, members, when the member is speaking, we listen in silence. Again, yes, there could be discussion with your colleague next door, but not across the chamber, please. Proceed, member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is the police service of Trinidad and Tobago that is the first responder to protect and serve in the fight against crime. And this government stands committed, and I will come to list the initiatives we're doing and working with them in the provision of resources for them, including yesterday at Cabinet taking a decision where we agreed with a request from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service for an additional 60 crime scene investigators. And we at the Cabinet level agreed to provide them with that resource. They have 15 permanent now, 31 on month-to-month contracts. But we took a decision, even in this time of little, to provide the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service with an additional 60. And I hear them on the other side, criticizing it. As the Attorney General reminds me, the Honourable Member for Siparia was talking about some of the things that came out of our discussions from opposition and government when we met months ago to try and align ourselves in the fight against crime. The DNA, we are actively pursuing the construction of a new forensic science center that will include a DNA bank. And we have actually this week begun to receive the drawings for this initiative. The Minister of National Security, the Honourable Attorney General, and myself have been having those discussions. They have been leading the charge on making this a reality. It has been sitting on the books for too long. This is one of the initiatives. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want the people of Trinidad and Tobago and the civic-minded citizens to know another difficulty we faced when we came in. It was within the first month of us being in office. The intelligence services came to us and told us, can we turn the servers back on? Yes. The intelligence services came to the Honourable Attorney General, the Minister of National Security and myself and said, can we turn the servers back on? We asked them, what are you talking about? And we were told by the intelligence services of Trinidad and Tobago that those, unfortunately on the other side, not in this house today, gave instructions to take the servers off of the machinery being used by the intelligence services. How do you fight crime if you're not able to detect it before it is happening? We were shocked about that. They then told us that there was facial recognition software in Trinidad and Tobago. And again, in the period 2010 to 2015, it was dismantled and destroyed at the instructions of a very high-ranking member of the People's Partnership Cabinet. Let the people of Trinidad and Tobago know these things. These are facts. Another issue we faced is the prison system that the Honourable Member for Siparia spoke about. and hearing that there are conversations taking place between prisoners and those on the outside, and hits being called from inside. It is not rocket science. Where are the grabbers and jammers?
Where were they?
So we asked that question, and the Honourable Member for St. Augustine can tell the country that he was responsible for the procurement of grabbers and jammers to prevent this from taking place. And you know what we were told, Mr. Deputy Speaker, again? That instructions came, and I'm sure the Honourable Member for St. Augustine didn't even know this, that those who sat around a table with him were undermining what he was trying to do in the prison service. So don't stand here today or on any other day. Don't stand here today or any other day and tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago that crime goes up under PNM government. This is what we faced within the first couple months of coming into government. Immediately we moved to get them out of the boxes and to get them operationalized to assist in the fight against crime. Another thing we were told when we came in, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the utilization of audio and visual recording equipment for the police service in recording statements from persons who are accused of crime. And why that wasn't being used? Well, we did it. At the National Security Council level, we did it. And these are just some of the first few elements we faced as a government coming in. So for 5 years, porous borders. For 5 years, the dismantling of the intelligence equipment, the facial recognition equipment, the grabbers and jammers. Mr. Deputy Speaker, another important issue that the people of Trinidad and Tobago should know about is what they did. They bastardized, criticized SWAT, which was doing a very good job. But let me tell you what happened. We were told by the Special Forces of Trinidad and Tobago that certain members of the cabinet, of that cabinet, went up to their camp and told them, put all of your equipment into a warehouse. Certain members of the former cabinet went and dismantled the equipment being used by the Special Forces of Trinidad and Tobago. I look at the shocked faces of some of the members opposite who were sitting at cabinet, and their faces show to me here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that they did not even know some of their colleagues were doing this. They took the equipment from the Special Forces of Trinidad and Tobago, put it in a warehouse, and it was only post-September 2015 they were allowed back in, and it had rotted. Tens of millions of dollars of equipment. That's true. Let me tell you what else they did, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Certain members of that cabinet went to get blue lights. They took the vans and the vehicles from SWAT and they took them. And look, Naparima, I want the people of Trinidad and Tobago to listen to him. Naparima has just said, yes, but we reduce crime. They produce porous borders, destroy the equipment.
They increase crime.
I'll come into that.
Member, address the chair. Silence.
Thank you very much. 2 years later, I'll tell you what we've done. They will also, the country of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and every civic-minded citizen of Trinidad and Tobago will recall the state of emergency. A state of emergency was called. We, Trinidad and Tobago, and every tax-paying member of Trinidad and Tobago, citizen, are now faced with tens of millions of dollars that may run up into hundreds of millions of dollars of claims by those who were held under a state of emergency called by the former administration. And we wrote when we came in, because we're faced with these claims now. They call a state of emergency. To this day, the country has not been provided with a satisfactory answer as to why there was a state of emergency. They say they reduced crime. We are now faced with hundreds of millions of dollars of claims, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And when we wrote to the former Prime Minister and the former Attorney General, because under the Constitution, those two posts constitute a cabinet. A Prime Minister and Attorney General are all that are necessary constitutionally in Trinidad and Tobago to compose a cabinet. And when we wrote to them to say, provide us with the reasons for the state of emergency so we could defend the Treasury of Trinidad and Tobago against persons who are now claiming against Trinidad and Tobago, we have received no response. So we go to court on a weekly basis, trying to defend claims and failing. And that lies on their lap. So don't come here now and try and bring a motion like this and talk about the anti-crime plan. That's an anti-crime plan. No OPVs, destroy intelligence equipment, unplug servers, get rid of facial recognition servers, bring the special forces equipment into a warehouse, take all the blue light vehicles, grabbers and jammers left in a box, unfortunately, St. Augustine. DNA was in operation. We sat here in this parliament and supported it. That is another point, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you would permit me. If you would permit me, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Again, people of Trinidad and Tobago, a PNM opposition from 2010 to 2015 supported over 92% of the legislation brought by those on the other side. 92% of the legislation. We come here every week. We've had walkout after walkout. All we can do as legislators is to pass legislation. All we can do is sit down here and work together. I was happy to hear the member of Siparia and the Attorney General in their crosstalk today talk about what is hopefully now going to become the new norm. But I sat here along with the Honorable Leader, the Attorney General, Hinds and others when I was given the opportunity in the Senate in that other place, and we sat there for over 14 hours time after time. We supported the public procurement legislation. We supported the DNA. We supported 92% of their legislation. Let them say what they do as an opposition today. They were reading out our manifesto promises, the appointment of a commissioner of police. Let the fact be stated here, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The last permanent commissioner of police in Trinidad and Tobago was fired by a UNC and PP government.
July 2012.
And from July 2012 until 2015, there was no move to appoint a new commissioner. So don't come here now and talk about it. The first thing we did when we came in, you want to know what we did in 20 months? The first thing we did as a government coming in is to look at the order, to try and simplify the order, and to get the process done. What did that opposition do? Let them tell the population. They went and challenged it and dismantled it. And now we're faced with a situation of difficulty in appointing a commissioner of police. We did what we can. Right?
Silence. Members, we have 4 more minutes for the tea break. Let's please conform. Proceed.
Thank you very much. We are still proceeding. The Police Service Commission is still proceeding with the assistance of the government from a financial point of view, excuse me, in appointing a permanent commissioner of police. But we did what we could. Again, tell the population what they did, the instability they tried to create after the election with the challenge of the election petitions. I practiced law, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for 17 years, and I never stood up after a case that I lost, the very few that there are, to say that I won. That is what happened, and it continues up to today. Losing cases and saying they win, trying to create instability.
Vindicated.
The NOC, a lot is being said about the National Operations Center. I want to tell the civic-minded citizens of Trinidad and Tobago here today that this government has not dismantled the NOC. This government finished the NOC. We came in, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and we found $1 billion contract. Sole select, $1 billion contract, sole select, no cabinet minute for it, signed by the then chairman of the National Security Council, spent $1 billion. One fell swoop of the pen. No cabinet ratification. But what did we do?
We paid Siparia.
We have paid for it, we've completed it, it is operational. Anyone who knows anything, Mr. Deputy Speaker, about how a national operations center and the type of equipment that that contains should be used, it is not for everybody to go inside. And this story that they're continuously trying to sell the population is an untruth. In that National Operations Center, you have the police, you have the Defense Force, you have the Coast Guard element and the Air Guard element of the Defense Force. You have the, yes, you have the SSA, right? That is how it works, right?
Please, you can use your phone. 1 minute. Member for Caroni East, your turn will come. Proceed, member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Let the population also look on at those who talk and interrupt and the timing of their talking and interruption. I am going to come, when we come back, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am going to refer to the reports that were laid in this House, the annual reports of interception of communication. You want to talk about interception of communication? I'm going to tell the population what you all did in 2013 and 2014 when we returned.
Members, at this time, we'll break for tea. We resume at 5 p.m.